Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1423 of the War News stream. And we have very big news from every region once again tonight. We've seen that U.S. forces have begun evacuating bases in the Middle East as deployments are escalating to the region. We've also seen that Moscow is currently battling a massive chemical fire right near their capital. And also, the U.S. has declared military activity over Mexico over the next 2 months, which we're not really sure what that is, but a very big piece of news. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as significant and major developments have evolved both in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and also the Americas as well over the course of just the past 24 hours alone. Significant news has emerged that the armed forces of Ukraine were able to launch a successful attack on the Russian Federation's capital of Moscow overnight, with significant drone strikes being reported within the towns of Serpukov and also the town of Voskresensk, which are within the areas of Moscow's outer suburbs, or generally the gates to the city of Moscow. We have also been able to confirm that overnight the Ryazan oil refinery had been hit and damaged, while other reports of damage have also been reported near to the area of Mariupol, with a significant power outage being reported within the occupied city over the course of this day. Meanwhile, we have also heard major breaking news that the Crimean Bridge, or aka the Kerch Bridge, has suffered extreme and strenuous damage of some form of a structural variety. Not due to Ukrainian attack, but apparently due to poor construction of the bridge, as authorities are now going to be limiting all road traffic to be less than 1.5 tons in weight. Otherwise, it will not be able to cross the bridge due to the fear that the bridge may not be able to sustain the weight of heavier vehicles in larger numbers crossing the length of the bridge. This means that the Kerch Bridge, effectively for all strategic purposes, is now non-existent and may as well have been destroyed as of this announcement today, as Russian supply trucks and other supply vehicles will no longer be able to use the bridge due to the structural limitations of the building. We have also been able to hear additional news as well that Ramzan Kadyrov's successor, his son, has actually ended up getting into a major crash today within Grozny, requiring a medical evac out of the area and directly to Moscow. Putin had to dispatch one of his private aircraft to the city of Grozny to be able to airlift the kid out of the area. He's 18 years old, by the way, just to make that clear. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear additional news that the United States Armed Forces appear to be evacuating non-essential forces and personnel out of the Middle East over the course of the day. Satellite photography has confirmed that within some air bases within Saudi Arabia, some non-essential aircraft of the United States Air Force and personnel appear to have been moved out of the area as we are beginning to trim down military operations to be as lean as possible and directed only at strikes against Iran, or at least hypothetical strikes against Iran, which may be ordered within the future. Additionally, we have also heard that the USS George H. Bush, which has now set sail from Newport News Naval Shipyard over the course of the day, will be making its way into the Mediterranean, technically under UCOM's area of responsibility, but generally able to respond and react to situations that are transpiring inside the Middle East, alongside the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is expected to be arriving within theater in the later part of tomorrow evening. Additionally, we have also seen that inside of the Syrian civil war, there appears to have been some sort of an agreement that was made today between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian interim government. Heavy fighting began to occur near to the area of the town of Deir Hafer along Motorway 4 heading to the area of Lake Assad and the Euphrates River, and the U.S. forces immediately and rapidly responded on scene, racing into the area. Not long after, we heard that there was some form of an agreement that's now been made to where the Syrian Democratic Forces are going to withdraw and only hold positions on the northern side of the Euphrates River, or generally the eastern side of the Euphrates River, while all other positions that have been held by the SDF up until this point will be handed over to the Syrian interim government if they're on the western side of the Euphrates. Additionally, we've also heard that a CIA intelligence brief has largely confirmed the information that we had spoken about on this channel whiles prior, as we have now heard that the Syrian interim government is apparently working with the Republic of Turkey on a larger and broader offensive that will be conducted at some point within the future to completely crush the Syrian Democratic Forces and bring the entire nation under the control of the al-Jilani regime. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that another Russian flight has been conducted into Israel today for some unknown reason, but it's believed to be evacuations of diplomatic staff. Inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, we have seen that some unrest is still ongoing, but generally, from all video and picture evidence that we have seen so far, we have been able to confirm that executions are still going on the ground, and when I mean executions, I truly mean execution-style executions. Any protesters who have been found in the street are brought to their knees and immediately dispatched by internal security forces, much to the complete opposite of the statements made by the President of the United States, who is currently claiming that the massacres and on-the-site executions and hangings have been completely stopped as of today, which appears to not be true at all. Additionally, we have also been able to see that Europe has given a no-fly warning, considering that they believe the possibility of future U.S. strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran to be highly likely. We have also seen the martial laws continuing to sweep through the entirety of the country, with crackdowns becoming incredibly large in scale and scope across the entirety of the nation, and we have also been able to hear that the Balochistan independence movement, which is also heavily active within the southern regions of Pakistan, has also reared its head within southeastern Iran, and does claim that they will be taking up arms and fighting the Iranian government to try and see that the Islamic Republic of Iran's regime is finally toppled. Although that might be a little bit late to the party, considering that most of the uprisings and rebellions have generally been put down at this point, and the Iranian government is now starting to secure control of the broader part of their country. We have also been able to hear that within the Americas, a NOTAM has been issued over the next 2 months for U.S. military operations that generally appear to be spanning the whole of Central and some parts of South America, although it's a little bit unclear at the moment what exactly that's going to be meaning in the big picture. We have also seen that within South America, there's been some news of the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, actually meeting with the current leader of the now Maduro regime just without Maduro, and additional footage has emerged of the seizure of the tanker yesterday, the MT Veronica, that was a Russian shadow tanker seized from the Russian Federation and brought into U.S. custody. We have also heard some additional government statements as well within Washington that that the Russian Federation is actually being sued by I believe it is a loan holding firm for $225 billion in unpaid loans of the Russian Empire from 1916, which is quite bizarre.
What in the world? That's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. Also, by the way, just one more thing. This isn't big news, folks, but I do want you to stick around for this. We will be covering a little video that came out of the People's Liberation Army's media over the course of the day. We're not really sure which which theater command it came out of, but it's actually showing Chinese soldiers in the People's Liberation Army preparing for anti-drone warfare, and the footage is, to say the least, very interesting and enlightening, so we'll be looking into that later on tonight. But we have a humongous amount of news to cover, from the largest stories of the night all the way down on into the smaller ones, including the news from the UK, China, and elsewhere around the world. And of course, as usual, folks, as tradition dictates here on this channel, we will be getting through this news, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on into the smaller stories throughout the night. This means we'll be moving on into our first story within the area of Moscow. The Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another significant and overwhelming drone attack against the Russian Federation overnight, with a larger amount of these drones being seen flying towards the areas of occupied Ukraine and the Russian Don region, which is what people call the leg of Russia. It's the area of land right here, sandwiched in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, bordering Georgia and Azerbaijan. And we also understand that a larger amount of drones that appear to have generally escaped Russian detection made it towards Moscow. And this is where all of the damage was generally reported overnight. The Moscow air defenses, or at least the air defense ring, appears to have actually been overwhelmed, especially within its southern periphery near to the city of Moscow itself. Within the very outer ring road, and I mean the literal outer ring road, the A108, major Ukrainian attacks were conducted that appear to have caused significant damage to what can only be described as the gates into the city of Moscow. Inside of Serpukhov, we were able to confirm the Ukrainian armed forces and their drones were able to hit electrical substations within this area and were able to cause a city-wide blackout. From what we know, several 100,000 people within Serpukhov are without power at the moment, and most other civil facilities and utilities, due to the fact that most power and electricity has been completely knocked out citywide. We also have another clip here showing the complete blackout in Serpukhov. Very few lights are on, and we believe that those are only on from emergency generator power. It does appear quite obvious at this point that the Ukrainian armed forces are going to keep throwing drones at the Moscow air defense perimeter until they wear it down completely, and they are getting incredibly close to that at the moment. Moscow's air defenses are primarily based around the areas of Solechnogorsk, just north of Leningrad, and around the area of Novofomensk, and also down towards the area of Brunitsy, just south of the Zhukovsky and Domodedovo international airports. This makes up what we call the crescent shape of the air defense perimeter that exists around Moscow. Prior attacks have generally shown that Russia's air defense perimeter around the capital are the weakest near to the area of Mytishi, which is a suburb of the northeastern part of the city, and also near to Noginsk as well, where it appears that there is practically no air defenses, at least within that general area, compared to the air defense crescent that we see within the western part of the city's air defense ring. However, the problem with this is that while that area appears to be an Achilles heel of the city, it's incredibly difficult to actually get drones into that area, as they generally have to fly pretty close to the crescent of Moscow's air defense ring perimeter to be able to cut down on the amount of range and flight time, and also be able to cut down on the amount of time that Russia might have to be able to shoot down the drone by other means. For this reason, most drones have to run headlong in Ukrainian attacks directly into the Russian air defense perimeter, and hoping through brute force they'll be able to get some of the drones through and on into the greater Moscow area, which has started to be proven to be a lot more successful, at least in recent times, than it was when these tactics and attempts were first conducted. However, while that is the case, it does appear that last night that air defense perimeter was certainly overwhelmed. Also, not in Serpukhov, where several 100,000 people are now without power, but also within the town of Vokhnesensk, which is also another important town that is generally the gates to the southern area of the city of Moscow. You can actually see Vokhnesensk right here on the map, and especially within the very central area of the city, is a very large campus of industrial facilities and factories that exist within this area. But most importantly, within these areas right here where the industrial buildings are found within the city is a major chemical factory that produces chemicals that are used in munitions production for the Russian Federation's armed forces to be able to have some ammunition to keep the war effort in Ukraine going. That chemical plant was hit, and at the moment it appears that the fire is raging uncontrollably, with firefighting efforts proving to be completely fruitless at this moment against the ongoing blaze that is now consuming larger parts of this chemical factory within the area of Vokhnesensk. And here's one of the first clips that we have showing the damage caused to this major chemical factory. We see them showing the smoke billowing off of it, and also the fire right over there.
A hell of a lot of smoke out there. You don't want to see a fire at a chemical factory. I think the plant mainly made fertilizer, if the reports are accurate. But I'm also hearing reports out there claiming that residents are reporting an odd smell in the air and also saying their throat is a little bit scratchy. And we had heard that maybe the fire might have engulfed a sulfuric acid tank or something to that degree inside the factory. That's the allegation, at least. So it could be possibly some really noxious fumes coming out of that, too.
So you know what's actually interesting about that is that while it is technically a fertilizer plants are easily convertible into munitions factories, or at least some form of a propellant factory or facility, because the production process in between industrial grade fertilizers, or generally modern fertilizers, and propellant in, say, an artillery shell or small arms is actually not that far of a leap, meaning that there's very little transition that has to be done on the factory floor for their assembly line and also their machinery to be able to make that a reality. Meaning that from what we know, the Ukrainian armed forces most likely attacked this factory because it was believed to be producing munitions for the war effort for the Russian Federation to continue to use on the front lines in Ukraine. For that reason, we believe that they have hit this facility to try and knock out that sort of explosives and arms production that chemical plant is able to conduct. We also were able to see the fire here as well, once again showing us the massive billows of white smoke coming from the area of the chemical plant. And I gotta be honest with y'all, white smoke is highly questionable, very suspect.
I would say very suspect. I wonder if it is true because, with people claiming their throats are feeling scratchy and also their noses are burning, I wonder if it's true that the sulfuric acid has been caught in the blaze and has been basically put airborne from this facility. Because if that's true, that would be horrific, actually.
It would be pretty horrific, but this white smoke could be produced by a myriad of things. We can see that some of this white smoke is actually being vented by a smokestack, but some of the white smoke further on from in the back is actually from an explosion. And generally, whenever we see fires, folks, in the war in Ukraine or really anywhere around the world, most of them take on a fairly gray or black color to their smoke, meaning that that would be generally a normal fire by all intents and purposes. Whenever white smoke is seen, something incredibly close to gunpowder or some form of explosive propellant is on fire and burning at that point, or something else along those lines that is not good to inhale by any standards. So something in this chemical plant, either sulfuric acid or some sort of a finalized component, say fertilizer or refined munitions to be used to produce, say, artillery shells, tank shells, or even small arms, is on fire at that chemical plant. Also confirming that this plant has taken somewhat significant damage and will most likely be out of operation for some time. Russian firefighting efforts, from what we know, have largely been unsuccessful at the moment, and the Russian Federation is still battling to try and see if they can even control the blaze to try and save as much of the chemical factory as they possibly can. You can actually see one of those smokestacks right here on that chemical plant, and this is actually the very campus of that chemical plant. Right around here, this is the larger area of it. So right now, this entire chemical factory is down and out of operation while they try and fight the blaze and eventually bring it back to some form of limited operational capacity. In the meantime, a lot of people are talking about these attacks that were conducted around the Moscow area, and the fact that we really didn't see any drones fly into this area. There was no reported air defense fire, at least a lot of it that we saw, and there also was absolutely no warning of drones flying into this area. Just a note, to everyone really quickly, while we are kind of assuming that it was a part of the larger Ukrainian drone attack tonight, very little if any drones were detected by the Russians. This is the map that was posted by the Russians themselves, flying towards the area of Moscow. A lot of these drones were actually flying towards Mariupol, Crimea, or greater on into the Russian Don or towards Voronezh and Kursk. We didn't really see any of them flying towards Moscow, at least from Russian air detection. So that brings us into the question. What actually caused these crippling attacks that were seen near to the area of the outskirts of Moscow? Was it drones? Was it some form of sabotage? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this was a very, very big loss for the Russians. This is one of their largest chemical plants they have that allegedly made fertilizer, but could have also been involved potentially with the war as well. So was it likely sabotage that caused this major fire? And it looks like 48% said yes, it sounds like a sabotage attack, while 30% said it might have actually been hit by a drone in the area, and 11% said no, it sounds like a legitimate accident that caused the fire. So we have not seen any drone footage hitting this plant. So we have not not been able to confirm that a drone hit it, and I have some serious doubts that a drone actually did strike this plant. So I'm leaning toward the idea this was a sabotage attack, because even for the Russians, and this is like not very good standards here, but even for the Russians, they take precautions at their chemical plants, not quite to the degree I think the U.S. takes, but they take some precautions at least, because it's still very dangerous chemicals in the plant, and they wouldn't do something as reckless as to start a fire in their own chemical plant. So I know some people are going to say it's possible, and yes, it is possible, but I would believe it's more likely a sabotage attack, because this is something that's very critical to the Russian Federation, and it's something that Ukraine would want to take out. So my guess is it's likely sabotage. I'm with the 47%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm generally with the 47%. I think this might be something along the lines of a sabotage attack, although we would generally believe, as we normally would, that any sort of explosions or damage that's caused in the midst of a Ukrainian drone attack is caused by drones. We really didn't see any drones in the Moscow area, and while we would assume, because there was a drone attack, this was caused by drones, there was no video of incoming drones or explosions of drones onto these facilities or to the general power grid in Serpukov, which knocked out the power for several 100,000 people. So, for that reason, I'd actually say that there's a high likelihood here this may have been sabotage. OSHA doesn't really exist, and neither does the Environmental Protection Agency in the Russian Federation, and so there is the possibility that this could have just been a little workplace accident, but workplace accidents like this at chemical factories is generally unheard of, and the only other time that we've heard of an incident like this anywhere in Russia, and this is actually probably the funniest one that I can ever remember as well, so this will make for a great story, was way back in the day at Votkinsk. This was like back in late 2023 or so. This giant factory facility here where all of these buildings are is actually a major factory that produces ICBM missiles and boosters for the Russian Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Nuclear Defense Forces. At some point, it turns out, folks, we actually were able to generally find this out much later after the fact, somebody in the factory was apparently smoking a cigarette near to a solid propellant storage area, or there was some sort of electrical fire that happened, but it literally obliterated most of this facility and sent it sky high back in the day, knocking out a good amount of the facility's production abilities. So a workplace accident is possible, but that is the only other time that I've seen such a large scale of an accident happen that would cause significant damage like that. So I would have to say that it's highly unlikely that it was a workplace accident. It's more so likely this was some form of an act of sabotage. And we've also seen that in prior attacks over other days, like the one in Lisky, chemical plants are being targeted by Ukrainian drone attacks and the Ukrainian armed forces, meaning that whether this was a direct attack by drones or a direct attack by partisans or some form of a sabotage operation, the Ukrainians are targeting chemical factories at the moment, and that means that most likely would be Ukrainian sabotage that will lead to that coincidentally happening in the midst of Ukraine attacking multiple other chemical plants through this area of the country. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from what we would know at the moment, about the Moscow attacks, and also giving you all a little bit of a follow-up on our Ryazan attack last night. We went through a great deal of analysis last night, folks, to tell y'all the likelihood of what was hit in Ryazan. We didn't know what it was yet. Not enough data had come out. We did know of impacts and explosions in the Ryazan area, but we didn't have any video or picture evidence of those attacks. So we broke them down. We said the highly likely option was that they hit the oil refinery or the thermal power plant. We said the second likely option is that they hit the airfield to the northwest of the area of the city. The least likely option was that they hit this metallurgical plant within the very northern part of the city. It turns out that our estimates and analysis was dead on the nail. The Ukrainians had gone and attacked the oil refinery in the area of the city of Ryazan for about the 12th or 13th time. The firm satellite did confirm that there is a larger fire raging right now on the campus of the oil refinery, and while we haven't really been able to get any good video or picture evidence of this fire, the firm satellite showing a blip of a fire on the refinery does confirm that a fire did happen and that there was a Ukrainian attack by drone that had been conducted directly onto the refinery, and we would once again assume that this refinery has been knocked out of action for about the 12th or 13th time in the war until repairs are effected to bring it back up to some sort of operational capacity. I would have to say, a lot of Russian soldiers must be rolling in their graves right now, the ones who have been sent into the meat grinder in Ukraine, considering that refineries throughout the country, chemical plants, military facilities, and everything else that would be strategic for Russia's war effort keeps getting hit over and over again, and the Russians just never seem to be able to stop any of these attacks or their success. And you don't really have to look far to see if they're rolling in their grave. You literally just have to look right over to the left of this refinery, and you see the massive cemeteries that Russia has constructed to house all of their new dead just from this city alone of Ryazan throughout the war. We always have to point this out when we come here because it really is something, a bit of an irony really, that these Russian soldiers were fighting and dying inside of Ukraine to try and see that the Russian Federation would eventually achieve a victory. Meanwhile, literally right next door to them, about a quarter mile away, the Russian Federation has suffered its 13th defeat in trying to defend this oil refinery from a Ukrainian attack, kind of giving you all a little bit of an idea that while this graveyard's growing in size, the refinery's oil capacity is shrinking in size year over year, no matter how many people are being put inside of the cemetery. So not really a good move for the Russian Federation, and once again showing that if the cemeteries are growing and your oil capacity or oil refining capacity is shrinking, that generally is what we would sum up as a losing war. But moving on out of Ryazan and on into the greater part of the Russian Federation at large, we have also been able to confirm a really interesting piece of news, folks. One that I gotta say was something to hear today. Down in Grozny, in the land of Chechnya, which basically is like a different world for the larger part, there was a little motor convoy that was going on. The Kadyrov has some family members, and generally they're given preferential treatment. And some people actually don't know this, folks. This is something that I find very interesting about Russia. In Russia, there is an existent law on the books pertaining to speed limits, like there are in every country. And Matthew, tell me, what is the average speed limit on, say, any city street in Salt Lake City right now? What is it, 40, 45 miles an hour?
Probably about like 40 or something like that. It's really slow in Utah.
Yeah, something like that. You know, and in Grozny, they have a fairly similar uniform speed limit system. But here's the catch. In Russian law, codified into the law, any officials of the state, of any type, are given an exception to that law. They do not have to obey a single speed limit in Russia, as long as they claim they are getting somewhere for official business. So if you have to go on a lunch break in Russia and say you're a member of the Deputy Duma member or something like that, and you're in Moscow and you want to go to lunch or something, you have the authority, and you can generally bend this however you want because in Russia corruption's king, you have the authority to leave the Senate Dvorsky building in the Kremlin and then speed about 100 miles an hour down the road to whatever restaurant you want to go to, slam on the brakes, get out, eat how you want. You could be as reckless as you want with that as well, blowing through red lights and whatnot, because the law also gives an exception to that as well. Go and eat, and then punch it at 100 miles an hour back down to the Kremlin. You can do that. And the Chechens do that a great deal. As a matter of fact, they do that with entire convoys of their security personnel included as well, and they race around everywhere at about 100 miles an hour, recklessly endangering the public within the area to do whatever they want. And if you try and confront them on that, they'll just whip out a gun on you and threaten to shoot you. There's plenty of videos online proving that. If you don't believe me, that's a very common event and occurrence inside of Chechnya. But today, it appears that their time has been a little nigh. There's a younger family member to Ramzan Kadyrov, one of his sons, Adam Kadyrov. Let me go show him to y'all here really quickly. Adam Kadyrov is one of Kadyrov's kids. He's 18 years old, and he is kind of like the second in line to the heir to be the leader of Chechnya, at least assumed at the moment. But if Putin doesn't want them to be in charge, they're off. You know, they're not going to be in charge of Chechnya. Nevertheless, he was with a UFC fighter today, and he was racing in one of these convoys at about, 100, 110 miles an hour through the streets of Grozny. So it turns out, folks, that's not a good idea. Someone pulled out in front of the whole convoy, going maybe 10 miles an hour, and the entire convoy had to slam on their brakes. The kid was not paying attention, and he floored it right into the back of an Akhmat armored car or some sort of a barrier on the side of the road, seriously injuring himself and the UFC fighter that was inside of the vehicle. I could not show you the picture. It had a humongous watermark on it from the damaged vehicle, but the entire front of the vehicle had been caved in from the impact, showing that it was at an exceptionally high rate of speed when the crash occurred. The plane carrying Adam Kadyrov is preparing to depart Moscow, according to news earlier today, and he had regained consciousness and was with doctors at the Grozny airport. Now, apparently the situation was so severe as far as the injuries sustained that Putin actually had to fly his personal medical evacuation aircraft, seen right here for the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations, all the way down to Grozny to go pick him up, and then fly him back up to Moscow to go get medical treatment from a Moscow Central Hospital or university, which generally has the best medical treatment in the country. So that is what we understand is the situation as of today. It appears that Adam Kadyrov is still alive at the moment, as well as the UFC fighter, we believe. But apparently the crash was
Also,
quite...
the UFC fighter information, that's unconfirmed. That's a rumor that some guy, not a UFC fighter, but like an MMA fighter, was allegedly in the car with him, but nobody knows who he was. And also, I think they've denied that report too.
Oh, interesting. But outside of that, it does appear that Adam Kadyrov is in pretty bad straits. If you're in that bad of a medical situation that a hospital in Grozny cannot attend to you, especially the one that Ramzan Kadyrov had made just to tend to their medical issues whenever they needed it, inside of Grozny, you're not really in good shape, especially if you're having to go to Moscow to get the top-notch medical care within the nation. This is leading us to believe that Adam Kadyrov is probably not in that great of a condition at the moment. And while he may be conscious, he may have suffered some sort of severe damage to his body, or maybe even is suffering from some form of an internal injury, which would be incredibly difficult to treat or fix. With that in mind, a lot of people are talking about this major news that came out of Chechnya today and what this means for the future of Chechnya. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So earlier today, we could tell that something was wrong because on the streets of Grozny, there was some major traffic jams and nobody was really sure what was causing it. But it turns out that it was the motorcade of Kadyrov's son that had gotten in a major crash. And based on what I heard, this is allegedly what I think took place. It sounds like maybe there was a traffic jam ahead of the convoy. And, of course, the convoys are moving at very high speed. That's what they do inside of Chechnya. They drive like idiots. That's very common. They get these like really souped up like AMG cars and stuff that have huge engines and huge horsepower, and they go flying through the streets like maniacs. It's a like normal occurrence. So I think they just simply were not able to stop in time and smash into the back of cars based on the sounds of it, and they got mangled up in a really bad crash. So what is going on with it? It looks like 38% said it was a really stupid accident, while 37% said it sounds very suspicious and kind of odd, and 12% said it's probably overhyped. And I would say it sounds a little suspicious to me. We have no information proving that this was anything other than a simple accident, but the timing of it is a little bit strange because Kadyrov, the father, is alleged to have kidney issues right now, which is basically going to put him on the out and out, meaning he's currently dying. That's what we're hearing right now. So we've also gotten reports that the Kremlin is looking for a successor to Ramzan Kadyrov, and I believe the son is a potential candidate to be a successor. So the timing is a little bit strange because it's potential that this kid might have been taking charge of Chechnya, and now he's in foul shape in a hospital. So seems a bit strange. Not really sure if it's related, but the accident was very serious, and the kid almost lost his life by the sounds of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it is very suspicious. I'd actually have to be with a 37% as well, because right now we do understand there's probably going to be an ongoing power struggle in Grozny at the moment, as all of the top Chechens try and figure out who's going to be the head Chechen, or at least vie for Putin's declaration of the next head Chechen of Chechnya, or the Chechen guy, the Chechen dude of the Chechens. So it generally appears that it is a little bit odd, the timing of this event that would have happened, because this is generally once again opening up the way for the leader of the Akhmat to kind of be the next default leader of Chechnya after Kadyrov dies, instead of it being one of Kadyrov's kids. So I think that might be the case of what happened today. But I also got to say, folks, it's a little bit interesting that this also happened after Kadyrov's kids, including Adam Kadyrov, started to get incredibly vocal about the Ukrainian nation and the Ukrainian government, because it wasn't that long ago, it was literally just last week, that Adam Kadyrov said that he was personally going to bring Zelensky to Putin himself in chains, and then this happens to him about a week later. So I'm not saying that the Ukrainians did this to him, because it sounds as though it was largely an auto accident of some sort that just happened to happen, but there is a lot of moving parts around this to make me believe that there may have been some sort of an attempt to try and have the next possible heir to the throne at Chechnya off before they might be able to take him. So, who knows? But a very interesting story to hear nonetheless, and a little bit of that old classic Chechen drama that goes on down there. Also, by the way, one thing that I was finding really interesting, folks, and I was looking at this while Matthew was talking about his opinion on the poll, is that there are large parts of Grozny that are almost completely empty, where there's city streets, but there's really no buildings. And some of the buildings that are here almost look like they are partially destroyed. And it just hit me, folks. It just reminded me that Grozny was completely destroyed in the First Chechen War and the Second Chechen War, and it appears that they haven't really rebuilt some of these areas, like out here. So there's streets where there once were houses, but all of the houses were completely destroyed or leveled, and so very few of them exist, and if anything exists of most of them, it's practically ruins at this point, and not an actual standing structure. So a little bit interesting when I just kind of remind you all what the Russians have done to the Chechens, and now the Chechens are run by a group of people, which are the Kadyrovs, which are basically Russian puppets. So a little bit interesting with that.
Total Russian puppets. It's proof, in my opinion, that they're Russian puppets, because I mean, how does Putin send like the top plane to go pick up the kid and bring him back to Russia for medical care? It's like, obviously they've got some strong Putin regime connections, or otherwise you wouldn't get special treatment like that. So that pretty much proves it. It was well known. It was kind of like an open secret. I wouldn't even say it's an open secret. It's just an open fact at this point that they're highly connected. They're probably more connected than the regime inside of Belarus at this point.
Oh, definitely. And also another thing, folks. This is always something that's so fascinating about Chechnya as a place, is that Chechnya pledges undying allegiance and loyalty to Putin. Putin, mind you all, has conducted a 9-year war from 2000 to 2009 against the Chechen semi-autonomous republic, which saw the city come under significant damage even then. But more importantly, back in the mid-1990s under Boris Yeltsin, the first Chechen war was conducted, and that's what Grozny looked like during that time. It's believed that tens of thousands of Chechens living in Grozny, civilians that is, were killed ruthlessly by the Russian military in their offensive to try and take the city. Funnily enough, folks, the Russian army actually would end up losing the First Chechen War, and the Chechens would end up becoming victorious. Very similar sort of a story being echoed today with the war in Ukraine. Small country beating the Russians simply because the Russians are absolutely stupid and they don't really fight wars well at all, rather than just pouring men into a situation and hoping that it improves. So that's generally the sort of situation that Chechnya has found itself in the past, and now in the modern day, somehow, some way, the group of people who were basically massacred by the Russian army in 2 wars now see that they're leaded by a guy who is a puppet of Putin and pledges undying loyalty not only of himself but the entire region to the very government that killed tens of thousands of their people, while most people in Chechnya were alive to literally live through those sieges and those times that permeated through the region. But moving on out of that and the irony of that whole deal, we do have something that's a little bit more ironic today, and something that is humongous, at least in terms of its development and the kind of news that it is. The Kerch Bridge is out. It's not been blown up, and it hasn't been destroyed. It's just structurally deficient. That's the best way we can explain it. The Kerch Bridge was a humongous, and I cannot even exaggerate this, folks. This was a humongous feat for the Russians. The bridge is about, I think, something along the lines of 30 miles long. A lot of people in America know that that's not too long. The bridge over Lake Pontchartrain down in Louisiana is about 40 miles long or so this isn't really that big of a feat. But for the Russians, it's a huge thing. This was one of the longest bridges that Russia has ever constructed in their national history, and not only that, it connected them directly via a road connection to Crimea, which was an attempt to try and solidify their claim over the Crimean Peninsula, and also the Russians' claim that that's a part of their sovereign territory. Over the course of the entire war, the Kerch Bridge has come under multiple successful, attempted, and failed attacks, with the Ukrainians attempting to completely destroy the bridge, not just for symbolic purposes, but because of the fact that the Kerch Bridge was a fairly important strategic sort of a network for the Russians. The Russians didn't have to count entirely on the railroad and bus ferry that transported Russian equipment from the area of the town of the port of Kavkaz over to the area of Kerch. They could actually just drive the equipment or railroad it right across the bridge. Over time, the railroad bridge became a little less important, and the road bridge started to become the more important of the two. And then not that much long after, the bridge was starting to be used seldom less by the Russians, as they started to divert most of their transportation of logistics to the railroad and bus ferries. Then after those railroad and bus ferries were largely hit, damaged, or destroyed, they then moved most of their logistics entirely out of the Kerch Strait and over the land bridge that they currently occupy in southern Ukraine, largely meaning that the that the ferries and the bridge have not really served that much of a strategic purpose for supply line reasons for about a year and a half at this point. But if the Russians ever wanted to use it again, that time has passed. This bridge is now so structurally deficient that Russian authorities have now put out an issued statement today. And here is the statement. APP Dzhankoy, get ready for traffic jams. The Crimean Bridge may be closed to vehicles weighing more than 1.5 tons. As reported by the head of the Republican Traffic Police Department, Anatoly Borisenko, this will help to reduce the load on the overpass. We understand that the traffic flow towards Dzhankoy on the Novorossiya Highway will increase. In the future, it'll be a 4-lane highway. But for now, the bridge is now closed to any vehicle that's larger than something like a family sedan. So there will be absolutely no semi-trucks or supply trucks that will be allowed to cross the bridge because they were trying to reduce the load on the overpass due to some form of a structural deficiency found within the bridge. We don't know what structural deficiency that is. We're still trying to figure that one out. But something is apparently quite amiss with the bridge. It's not a heavy load. A 1.5 ton load per vehicle is an incredibly light load for a bridge to handle, meaning that this thing is quite bad off. Anything that would be heavier like a semi or a large transports of semis traveling over this bridge can actually bring the thing down at this point, apparently. So they're now restricting the passage of any vehicles heavier than 1.5 tons. I mean, that's quite small. And I gotta say, I do not really know what's going to be coming out of that, but basically, folks, the Ukrainians will never hit the Kerch Bridge again. I can promise you all that now, because it's not even like the Russians could use it for supply reasons, even if they wanted to. So moving us on out of that, we do have to get into something that I did not put down on the map, but it's still a fairly large story to talk about nonetheless. Over the course of the past few days, we have heard of 3 Russian officials and executives that have died under mysterious circumstances, falling out of windows, having heart attacks, just waking up and then having dropsy disease and dropping dead. We've heard it all over the past few days. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, what's going on? Is there a new purge? Are these people just, sickly? Are they ill? Are they having some sort of an affinity for windows to the point they fall out of them? What's going on here, Matthew? And what are people thinking about it?
Okay, so it seems to be a pretty high frequency. This happened over just the last week. We've heard of 3+ former Russian officials and executives just dying mysteriously over the past week. And you might be wondering, well, Matt, what do you mean by mysterious deaths? So how's it mysterious? Well, for example, the deputy head of Russia's Ministry of Labor was found dead in his doorway. It was sort of unknown how he died. He was just found dead in the doorway. He wasn't that old, by the way, so he didn't die of old age. Also, a CEO of a Russian fertilizer company was found dead in Cyprus, and I can't describe exactly how he died, but it was a very strange death, one of these weird deaths that occur from Russian sources. Also, a GRU intelligence officer was found dead in the embassy in Cyprus too. So this all happened over the last week, and also very, very odd circumstances related to their death, which reminds you of all the other stuff we've heard of Russia knocking people off over and over and over. So is it a new purge? That's the question. 71% said yes, it's a new purge by the Putin regime, while 18% said it's simple Russian revenge on these people, and 4% said it likely Russia's not even involved, and it could be perhaps Ukraine or someone else doing this. So based on the way that these were conducted, it sounds like a Russian tactic. My guess is the Russian FSB is likely carrying this out for some reason, and you can't ever put revenge as a motive out of the question. Russia holds grudges, and some of these people might have done even small things to piss off Putin's regime, and that could have been enough to sentence them to death. That's as bad as it gets in Russia, that small things can get people sentenced to death, and then they come after you. So I'm with the 18% actually. I think it's simple revenge. There was nothing specifically interesting about any of these people that led me to believe that maybe they were speaking out about Ukraine. It sounds like they might have just pissed off Putin internally, and that might have been the end of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think there's a new purge by Putin. Windows are very much in season at this time, folks, in Cyprus. During these more milder months around the winter time in the Mediterranean, a lot of people like to open up their windows and get a little smell of the fresh air outside, and also let the air ventilate. They don't have air conditioners, so that's one of the best ways to get a nice cool breeze going on through the house. And whenever that happens, some people end up slipping and falling right out of the window, just like this beautiful window that we have right here. I would have to say that I think think that is the case. Some people have probably pissed Putin off, or they pissed off someone higher up than them in the Russian government, and so they just got killed for that reason. So it's either a purge by Putin or some sort of a higher official in charge of the Russians in Cyprus or in other areas that one of these people killed. So that's probably the case.
These deaths right here are actually a lot more straightforward and direct than the previous ones. I mean, we've seen some wild, like assassinations that have been allegedly conducted by the Russian intelligence services. I mean, there's been crazy ones. Like, for example, some guy was on his yacht and somehow he drowned, and then somehow he got bullet wounds after he drowned. So, I mean, they tried to classify it as he went out on his own accord. Let's just leave it at that. But how can you go out on your own accord when you had already drowned? I'm like, there's weird stuff like that. Also, people falling out of 10-story hospital windows, and it just happens to be the security cameras are off that day. Weird stuff like that. These aren't quite as crazy as that, like that far-fetched, but they're still really odd looking considering that they all died within a week, and they died, just basically dropping dead pretty much.
Man, in Russia, when they put the death certificates out on these people, they put for the cause of death.
Yeah, it's just death. There isn't like official cause. Like, is it cardiac arrest? Is it drowning? Is it asphyxiation? What is it? It's just like simple death.
Hey, it's like, well, how did he die? Well, he died. It's like, okay, well, case closed, I suppose. Moving on from that, it's really interesting though, folks. People in Russia just have this very inane knack of whenever they become inconvenient, they just die. Like it's so interesting, Like it's almost like there's a power from up above, just off of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and also here's another crazy one I forgot. I was actually did a video on this like a year or two back about some of these weird deaths that were taking place because they're so wild and so, like, I don't want to say it's comical because obviously someone died, but it's like cartoonish like styles of death. It's like one guy had fallen down a huge flight of stairs. I'm talking about like a big flight of stairs. Like we're talking about like 2 stories up, and it was a flight of stairs that went straight down to the ground floor. This guy had allegedly tripped at the very top, had done like somersaults down the stairs, and then the guy got finished off. And also, it's like the guy was a younger guy. He's not like, he's not old and tripping over his own feet or something. It's clear that something else happened in that story there. So, I mean, it's just crazy things. I think the Russians do that stuff on purpose to send a message.
I think they probably do. Man, I gotta say though, it's just absolutely insane, folks. Whenever we have to talk about the Russians, it's always the most comical sounding stuff. Like, like the one time, folks, some guy like in let's see, where in the world was it? Some guy in Moscow, I believe it was. He ended up getting offed because he was like a stockbroker or something, and he opened up his window in the summer. This was like the official explanation, folks. He opened up his window in the summer to get some fresh air, which is where I took a lot of inspiration for my joke just a minute ago. And for some reason, he just leaned out the window to get a smell of the beautiful Moscow air, which smells like sulfur and rotten eggs. And then he fell out of his window to his death, like from 13 stories up. It's like you can't make me believe that that's what happened. That just sounds ludicrous. Like it's like that's insane.
Wait, I got one more. I got one more worse one that's even crazier than that. This one's like probably one of the craziest. There was a guy, he was in charge, I don't know if it was the Moscow Aviation Institute or something. He was like one of the former directors of one of these Moscow organizations, and he had said something that had pissed off Putin like in the months prior. So the guy ended up getting like injured or something. So he got sent to the hospital, and it was a very high hospital room on like the 9th floor or something. And the guy was bedridden, like he couldn't even walk. He was injured that bad, he couldn't even walk. So somehow they said the guy got up out of the hospital bed, even though he couldn't walk, and ran and tripped out of the window and fell 9 stories down to the bottom, even though he couldn't walk. It's like, and then also the security cameras were out too. And also just happened to be the nurses were off duty at that time as well. So it's like, I mean, you don't get any more blatant than that. It's like, obviously something's severely wrong with that story.
But you know what's the most interesting about the window falling stories, folks, is that in Europe, including Russia, the windows don't open all the way by law, like they can't. And that's probably the most interesting thing about the stories is that unless it's an older building that was built before the collapse of the Soviet Union, and a decent amount of these modern buildings like a modern hospital, they are going to be built to modern standards. Their windows are built in the form of style that's seen throughout the rest of Europe, which I believe is called the tilt and turn mechanism, which is where they kind of just open up a little bit to allow in a draft, but not enough for you to be able to, like fall out of or anything like that for safety reasons. So it's like, Does anyone believe it's like what they did is that they unscrewed that window from its hinges, and while they were talking to the guy, they're like, you're really in some trouble right now, and he's hearing the screwdrivers in the background. He's like, oh no, okay, well it's time to take a tumble now. It's like, and then they toss him out the window or something.
I tell you what, those non-openable windows just have a way of just happening to open at the exact point these guys are tripping, right next to a high, like a high height of a building.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. It really is. But moving on out of Europe for a moment, folks, because we do have to get on into the rest of the news for the night, all of our major stories. We do have to cover the major news that is coming out of the Middle East at the moment, as we have been able to see that the USS George H.W. Bush is currently on its way to the Mediterranean. That is not the George W. Bush is in Little Bush. That's Daddy Bush right here. That's the Daddy Bush aircraft carrier, CVN-77, which is currently on the way to the Mediterranean at the moment. This means that while it'll technically be within UCOM's area of responsibility, it's actually going to be more so operating for CENTCOM, meaning that it'll be operating against Iran, meaning that we now have 2 carrier strike groups on the way to the Middle East. The USS Abraham Lincoln will be arriving incredibly soon. The USS George H.W. Bush is going to be a little bit of a ways out at the moment. So that's what we're understanding for now. We'll be waiting to see when that aircraft carrier will arrive. But in the meantime, we've also seen that U.S. forces are beginning to evacuate most personnel out of the area and are only leaving behind essential personnel. Satellite imagery has indicated that the United States and Saudi Arabia have evacuated non-essential aircraft from the Prince Sultan Air Base, leaving only tanker aircraft at the facility. You can see that right here. Here's the before picture, and here's the after picture. Before, there were about 15 C-130s, 5 KC-46 Pegasus, 1 C-17, and 1 UFO. Now we can only see 3 KC-135s, 7 KC-46s, and a singular KC-130 Hercules, meaning that everyone else has been moved out, practically except for the aerial tankers, and a transport for the additional personnel and crew members that function and operate with those tankers. So this is generally showing us that there's a bit of thinning of, I guess you could say, the fat of the U.S. forces right now within the Middle East to prepare them for possible strikes on Iran. And also the fact that 2 carrier strike groups are now moving into the area, that's giving us a little bit of an idea that there is probably something that's going to be going on here. We have also seen that at the exact same time, the Islamic Republic of Iran seems to be in the hot seat at the moment. The Europeans have actually issued a do not fly warning. I'll read it to y'all right here. This CZIB is issued based on information currently available to the European Agency of Space, or the EASA, member states, and the European Commission in order to share information which is considered necessary to ensure the safety of flights over zones of interest and indicate areas of high risk. Given the ongoing situation and the potential for U.S. military action, which has placed Iranian air defense forces on a heightened state of alert, there is currently an increased likelihood of misidentification within the FIR Tehran, OIIX. The presence and possible use of a wider range of weapons and air defense systems, combined with unpredictable state responses and the potential activation of surface-to-air missile systems, creates a high risk to civil flights operating at all altitudes and flight levels. So it appears that the Europeans have now put out a warning today that is generally indicating that they believe that there is some form of armed action that may be happening soon, and due to the heightened tensions, due to the fact that the Iranians are also seeing the U.S. beginning to prepare for strikes on their country, the Iranians are on such high tensions they might accidentally shoot down a civilian airliner that's flying over their country. And so at the moment, we're hearing that Europe is saying not to fly over Iran. Let's check and see if people are following along with that rule here really quickly. So let's see, folks. What do we have currently flying over Iran? There's actually a lot of flights, at least within eastern Tehran. So we have a Mahan Air, we have a Sepharon Airways, a Karun Airways, an Iran Air, Fly Dubai, so Dubai isn't paying attention to that, Varesh Air, Kish Air, ATA, Mahan. Really just Middle Eastern states who are kind of just flying through the airspace, or Iranian aircraft are basically the only ones within the area. We can see this Turkmenistan Airlines 777, which is currently flying its passengers into what I can only describe as the gates of hell. So we'll be waiting to see.
Also, what do we have going on for like U.S. military flights? Can we filter it down to that to see exactly what we have right now in the region? Because I'm seeing some people say that there might be some. Actually, there's very little going on, actually. There appears to be a drone right there, I think. And also possibly one aircraft in Qatar that's moving. It looks like a Qatari Air Force plane. So there's basically nothing going on, at least on transponder there's not.
I'll be honest with you. Oh, hey, by the way, I just wanted to point this out to everyone once again because just interesting to note. Here's another C-17 that's being forced to fly all the way around Israel right now because Israel isn't allowing our aircraft to fly through their airspace. Just wanted to point that out again because some people said I was lying about that. You can actually see that right here in real time. So, I gotta say though, seeing the airspace cleared out this much, it's really starting to put me on edge, Matthew, because usually this always happens right when we're about to do something.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm seeing Hokey Redneck said transponders might be off. It's possible that they could be off. It is Friday, of course, and the markets have been closed for quite some time now. We're going into the Martin Luther King 3-day weekend. So if they're going to strike, I would assume it's probably going to be over this weekend because they probably wouldn't wait until a weekday when the markets are open again on Tuesday. So if they're going to do something, they'll probably have to do it by the weekend. And also, you got to remember the window to actually keep the protests alive inside of Iran is closing fast. So if they wait beyond the weekend, they might as well just go ahead and give it up at that point because the Iranians and also the mercenaries are going to put the protesters down pretty quick after that.
I would definitely agree. Let's see what else we've got going on for the U.S. We have a C-17 that flew from Reykjavik, Iceland, and is currently flying into the area of the Middle East. Apparently, that crew said, "Man, this Greenland stuff's getting hot. Hit it!" Like, and they're getting out of there. So that's interesting to note. And we have a pretty okay amount of flights currently happening over the United States, mostly law enforcement, though. Oh, what's going on down here in Alabama? Oh, look, Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. They got their little Kiowa up over Montgomery. Oh, man, you know a felony must have just been conducted in Montgomery. I can promise you money on that one. But let's see here. What in the world is over U.S. airspace? We have an RC-135. We have another KC-135, another KC-135, some C-17s, Pegasus. I don't know what that's why that's there. We also have a Globemaster, Poseidon. Generally, mostly transport flights currently happening over the U.S. I'm trying to see if we can get anything that looks a little bit more interesting. Oh, here's a Clipper that apparently is flying into Andrews Air Force Base at the moment, from Austin, Texas. So I wouldn't know who would be on that flight. And we also have this KC-135 kind of operating around the border at the moment. So a little bit interesting with that. Not really a lot special going on even within U.S. airspace at the moment, which I've got to say, folks, it's really starting to set off my radar of things are going to happen sometime around here soon. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so another sign that things are definitely happening right now is because the satellite images are showing that some of the bases in the Middle East are being evacuated of U.S. military assets and also perhaps personnel in some cases for some reason. And why is that the case? It appears to be just have happened over the last 48 to 72 hours, and it looks like 45% said it's for imminent strikes on Iran, while 42% said it's solely in case Iran attacks preemptively, and 7% says because the forces are being redeployed to a different theater. So I would say I think this is for likely imminent U.S. strikes on Iran. I know the statements by the President of the United States makes it sound like that we're going to back off the situation. But remember, though, he's also, he likes to do a little bit of trolling. He likes to do a little bit of misdirection. So don't always take the statements at face value. Sometimes it's intended to cause confusion. So that way there can be a bit of a smokescreen to some of these strikes. So we're still moving tons of assets to the region. We're moving another aircraft carrier to the region. We're evacuating bases. And now the airspace is extremely quiet, eerily quiet over the Middle East. So all the signs were already green for strikes on Iran, and the only thing holding them up right now is the timing. So I'm still leaning towards strikes are going to happen. I'm with the 45%. I would not rule them out. Of course, it's possible that maybe we could chicken out at the last second, but if we have any hopes of keeping the protests alive inside of Iran, they got to strike this weekend or it's going to be pretty much over. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would say that strikes are probably going to be possibly happening, but I also want to say, folks, that giving an analysis on this is really tough because the president's very unpredictable, so it's just really hard to say because we could move all of our forces into this area and then it might be another 5 months before we see anything happen, a lot like with what happened with Venezuela. So I mean, based off of all the signs, strikes are coming, but I wouldn't be able to tell y'all when. I wouldn't even be able to guarantee y'all if they're going to happen at all, because we could do all of this work to set everything up and get it ready to go, and then do nothing and then just leave, and that could also be likely as well. I also saw some people asking, why in the world is it that Israel does not allow our flights to go through their airspace, like this C-17 right here, which has had to fly literally all the way around Israel? And I've actually tried to find an answer to that, folks, and there are a couple of reasons why. The Israelis, apparently, from what I can find, rarely ever give permission for U.S. aircraft to fly through their airspace, or because the U.S. tries to fly to other countries in the Middle East, except just them, which means basically we're flying our own forces around the Middle East to set them up to defend the Israelis. That pisses them off that we fly into Jordan, so then they do not give us permission to fly through their airspace because we're flying into Jordan to set up our forces inside of Jordan to prepare to defend them from the incoming Iranian attack. So I gotta, like, from what I could find, it makes no sense at all. So, like, just to try and shorten it down to the most likely answer that I could find, is that apparently they don't like Jordan, and the fact that we fly our forces into Jordan and set them up there, our ground air defense forces and some air forces and such, including in Saudi Arabia as well, that apparently makes the Israelis somewhat unhappy, although we're literally building up our forces to shoot down incoming Iranian missiles that are going to be trying to hit them, so they don't allow us to fly through our airspace because of that. So we have to add, about an extra 20 to 30 minutes of flight time on a flight going into Jordan, maybe even an hour, because they just won't allow it to fly directly over their country. It has nothing to do, by the way, with the threat assessment on the ground, because the Israelis, as well as us, all know that the Hamas forces in the Gaza Strip have no ground air defense systems of any type that could threaten a U.S. aircraft or an Israeli aircraft, and there's also no such existent weapon systems within the West Bank. So it's not because of any form of threat on the ground. There are no threats. Complete air supremacy is seen over the entirety of Israel, even against Hamas.
Yeah, that's a little bit weird with that right there. Also, by the way, getting back to Iran real quick, since we were on the poll about it, there's one thing that we need to be careful about with Iran, because I see some people in the chat saying, "Oh, the protests in Iran really are not the U.S. problem. So why are we trying to get involved with it?" That was our original position, by the way. So I don't necessarily disagree with that when the people say that. But the problem is this, though: that was based on the protesters having enough momentum to overthrow the government, which is the sicko Iranian regime that's currently in charge. That was based on those reports. So it was believed, based on all credible intelligence, that the protesters had enough momentum to take the regime down. But now it's starting to look like, because the Iranians have brought in mercenary forces from Iraq, that now the Iranian protesters are getting put down in large numbers. And now there's mass casualties coming out from these huge butchering operations that the Iranian government's currently conducting. So that's a problem. And also, the U.S. president has told the Iranian people that help's on the way. He said that. So the Iranian people are out here in the street fighting, and also fighting for their freedom and fighting to get rid of this regime, which is anti-American. And I would presume that they're relying on the statement made by U.S. officials that help's on the way, and they're out there laying down their lives based on that statement. So we can't back out now that we've made these promises in the public. We need to follow through with it. If we end up backing out of this, then the Iranian people have zero reason to trust the United States at that point, because they've gone in the streets and started sacrificing their life to basically on reliance on that U.S. statement. So hopefully we're not backing out of it. I still don't think we are, but I'm just saying hopefully they're going to follow through.
I would have to agree. Hopefully we would follow through. And I know that a lot of people have the idea of, oh, the U.S. shouldn't get involved in this here and there. But the thing is that Iran is a serious threat to U.S. interests in the Middle East. I know a lot of people sit there and look at it through very two-dimensional lenses, so it's really hard to look at it in any other way, because a lot of people always hear the Israelis say it's a big threat for Iran to exist for their sake, and then a lot of people think that whatever we do against Iran is only for Israel's interest, not ours. But the flow of oil from the Middle East is an incredibly important thing for the United States to control and secure indefinitely, and Iran is an open and imminent threat to that sort of control within that area. That means that any sort of a situation that we can see to where the Iranian government could be toppled, whether through indirect action or direct action, is generally beneficial to us. But more importantly, our analysis on that changed to where we said we ought to just sit back and watch this revolution unfold and see how it goes. We watched how it went, and we saw how it was going, and then the Iranian government started killing a load of people. And then that starts moving this into an entirely different metric, because a lot of these people are out there in the streets because Reza Pahlavi's telling them to be out in the streets. You can literally go and read his tweets where he's telling them, go into the streets. And Reza Pahlavi is generally backed, from what we kind of know, by the United States, which also the president's been telling people, along with Pahlavi, to go out in the streets and basically go get shot at this point. So if we're telling these people to go out in the streets, we got to back them up eventually. You can't tell people go out in the streets and go die in droves, and then if you die in droves, we're not going to be there for you. That's not really a good position for the United States to be in. And on top of that, we've already threatened the Iranian government that if they conduct any form of massacres against their citizenry, we will get involved militarily. That is a evident and clear threat to the Iranian government that if they take a specific action, that we will follow through with armed action in response. So now it's a matter of principle that if we make a threat like that, we have to respond, because if we don't respond, we look weak and we look like we don't follow through with threats. And if that is the case, we're now once again running the risk that in other foreign policy situations with other countries, their foreign policy analysis might tell Xi or might tell Putin, well, in the Iranian situation, the Iranian government killed, say, thousands of people in the streets, and the U.S. threatened to take military action on them, and then they never did. They just completely fell flat on their threat. So because of that, our risk assessment right now is that you could invade Estonia, and the U.S. would not follow through with helping out Estonia either. And then that means that a lot of people are going to start not listening or adhering to U.S. threats because they're going to think they're full of hot air, and then we're put into a situation to where we're pretty much forced to respond or start losing significant gains or ground around the entirety of the world against our adversaries. So not only for the humanitarian reason is this important, not only for the strategic principle this is important, but just for the principle of putting out a threat, this is important to follow through on. Otherwise, we look like a joke in three ways.
And also, just following through with promises. Like if the U.S. makes a promise that helps on the way, we got to follow through with it. Otherwise, our word means nothing. Because if you recall, in Afghanistan, we actually ended up leaving behind a pretty good number of translators and people that worked with the U.S. forces in Afghanistan when we pulled out of Bagram and also the international airport. We left a good bit of them behind, and some of them ended up getting executed by the Taliban. So, that already created a bad precedent that people, folks in the Middle East that are working with the United States really are starting to lose trust in our word a little bit. So the last thing you want to do at this point is repeat that mistake in Iran with the protesters, and then they realize, well, look, America's full of hot air. Why should we take their word for anything? And then they're going to just lose all trust in us.
Yeah, that's exactly the case, and that's something that we cannot afford, folks. If that keeps happening, we keep putting ourselves in a worse and worse situation to where nobody takes us at our word, and it's going to force a lot more confrontations where countries are going to attempt to call our bluff, whether it's a bluff or not, because they're going to think that every threat we make is a bluff at that point. That's not a great position to be in. And I know, I know this just really quickly. Some people are going to say, well, that's not our problem anyways, and who cares? But we're not talking about you, as a person who goes to work at your job and then goes home to sleep and you go to the grocery store and stuff every once in a while. We're not talking on that level. We're talking about the United States of America as a nation of 350 million people with national interests that have a significant impact on hundreds of millions of people in this country, if not billions around the world every day. And that's the sort of decision-making level that we're at right now. We're not at, some guy, Joe Blow, is working at his job down in, say, Wyoming or something like that. We're talking about the entire country. So, when you talk about something like this on an international scale, you can't say, well, it doesn't affect me, it's not my problem. It affects the country. You are a part of the country. You are the country. So it is our problem. So we have to view it from that perspective, and we have to come up with some sort of analysis or an answer here that would actually oppose our own national interest. And in this situation, we have to respond, and we have to take armed action at this point against the Iranians, just on the mere principle of it alone, if not for the other three reasons that we had already pointed out. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we've also gotten from the Middle East, we are going to be getting on into the news from inside of Iran. We're actually going to be getting into the Syrian civil war news as well. But before we get into all that, folks, I do want to make sure to take a little bit of a moment here to say that we are greatly appreciative of so many people watching. We've had 80,000 people watch in the first hour and 10 minutes, and we actually have had a peak viewership tonight of about 16,000 people. That's a lot of people. And I got to say, we're greatly appreciative of all y'all watching so far, and we're going to take a couple of questions before we get into the rest of our news tonight. So we're going to take 3 questions. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, this one goes to Racer Jake. And thank you very much, Racer Jake, for that $50 support tonight. And we do appreciate that because, of course, it's that viewer support that keeps the entire channel running each and every day. And it's you, the viewer, that keeps us on the air. So we appreciate that. And Jake said, big love to you both. And I just want to let you know that you're appreciated by so many.
Hey, and thank you so much for the incredible support, Racer Jake, and helping this channel to keep on running. It's folks like you who help to make this thing possible day in and day out, each and every single night, and we're massively appreciative and thankful for folks like you who greatly enjoy our show. And I also gotta say, I have to say that while your super chats generally disagree with some of the points we make on air, they do make for very interesting discussion, and I thank you for posing some very interesting questions that allow for us to kind of debate our ideas more so than just speak about them in a bit of a vacuum. And I also thank you so much for the support and really enjoying our channel as well, because it is folks like you who help us to make this channel possible and keep this thing running each and every single day so we can cover the news how we've always covered it and also speak on our analysis every single night as well. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from My Trucking Travels. And thank you very much, good sir, for that $50 support as well. And we appreciate that generous support. He said, just your graveyard truck driver, saying, thank you for keeping me awake at night and giving me the unbiased geopolitical news that nobody else does. And thank you for the essential service. And please take one for the chat in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, My Trucking Travels, the truck driver of the LSA. And not only that, a graveyard truck driver. And I gotta say, I hope that you're not running over them tombstones. Those things could bust a tire. But beyond that, I also got to say thank you so much for enjoying our show. And also, it's great to know that we're able to keep you company on the road, at least for a couple hours while the show's running. And I hope that things are going well for you today out there on the open interstates and highways of the United States. I got to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it's folks like you and your support that helps us to be able to keep these essential services running of news coverage of the news and events from around the world. Not really a lot of people do it the way we do it, and also not really a lot of people especially in the mainstream, cover this at all. And it's folks like you and your support that helps us to be able to make this thing possible. A very small part of our viewership directly supports the channel every night in Super Chats, yet it is that very small part that not only helps me and Matthew to do this job every day as our full-time job, but also helps millions of people every single month to be able to have a reliable source of news. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing a reality. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're about to be moving on into our last question of this segment before we get on to the rest of the news. But I have just seen someone has said, this is some realistic AI. And I can promise y'all, folks, I've seen this over the past 2 days in the live chat. People debating whether me and Matthew are AI or not. We are not AI. The reason why you don't see our face on air is just because it takes a lot of extra work to set up a studio that looks good on air, and also think about how we look and how we're presenting to a camera. I more so like to focus on our actual substance of what we're talking about and what we're reporting on, and so that's why we don't show ourselves on air. That's always the way it's been. But if you want to know if we're real people, there are some videos, seldom few, on our channel that actually show our faces and you can actually see us talk in real life. We are not AI. Like, we are not bots. We are not machines. We are real people back here. So just to answer anyone's questions about that, we are actually real people. So with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're getting on into the rest of the news.
Depending on who you ask, though, we could all be AI, because some people say we live in a major simulation. That simulation theory, that's what they say. So we all could be AI. So that could be a lie, perhaps, depending on who you ask. But anyways, jumping into our last super chat here. This one goes to Richie, who puts in a $10 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support very much. He said, as a fellow SLC resident, welcome, and thanks for what you do.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Richie. And I gotta say, thank you massively for enjoying the channel, and also a big hello to a fellow resident of the Great Salt Lake. And I've gotta say, I hope that you've been enjoying this inversion, because we certainly have. Like, we've been loving this inversion. It's generally going away today, finally. But I do have to say, it's a wonderful thing to know that we do have viewers here from the Great Salt Lake area. And we hope that you've been enjoying the show tonight. We got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and thank you for the very warm welcome. Utahns, in my general experience, are incredibly nice, and I gotta say that's a wonderful thing to be out here amongst the Utahns and be around the people who live up to the name Utah Nice. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night. And with that in mind, folks, we're going to be moving on into the Islamic Republic of Iran. As we have been able to see that inside of the country, it appears that while the President of the United States has claimed that executions are not going on any longer, executions are still going on. A European official told Conflict Radar that they were aware that executions had continued in Iran in recent days. And while we are generally having to use that to report this, we can confirm to y'all that executions are happening in the streets. People are literally being taken and thrown to their knees and then shot by a pistol, literally at point blank range in the middle of the street. So summary executions are currently ongoing inside of Iran even today, although the President of the United States is claiming that they're not doing that any longer. We have also been able to hear that inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranians claim, that only 52 prisoners were executed at 42 prisons in Iran between the 5th of January and the 14th of January, most on murder and drug-related charges. However, Iranian authorities regularly accuse and charge political prisoners with these charges and crimes in order to justify their execution to those outside of Iran. I gotta say, fairly interesting. I also gotta say that this is incredibly interesting that 52 prisoners have been executed just in about a week and a half. That's basically unheard of in the United States of America. I mean, it's about one or two every few days across the entirety of the country. Even still, I don't even think it's that high anymore. I think the amount of people who are actually put on death row that are executed is wildly low these days within the United States of America because there's such a long appeals process, and generally there can be a stay of an execution at the last minute. So, a little bit interesting with that. 52 of them, and also we would generally believe that those are probably political prisoners that are being executed. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that according to the HRANA, they have stated the following as their compiled statistics. Around 2,855 civilians have been killed by the Iranian government, 165 security forces members have been killed by the Iranian people, 2,055 people have been severely injured, there's been about 22,000 arrests, 132 broadcast confessions, and about 3,882 additional deaths that are under review, but most likely a part of government-made massacres. So, that seems to be quite a large number. Even if it's not 12 to 20,000, 3,000 people being killed is a very large number. To remind everyone of this, the United States entered World War II and also the War on Terror for about the same amount of people dying at Pearl Harbor and the Twin Towers. So I'd have to say that that's quite an incredibly large number, and one that I'd have to say certainly requires some form of response, just due to the fact that on the humanitarian level, the United States of America cannot stand to see these sorts of grave casualties inflicted onto a civilian populace and stand by and just watch it happen and do nothing. And it also looks like a lot of people are talking about the claims as to whether or not Iranians are still being executed in the streets today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
So it looks like pretty much nobody's buying the bogus that Iran has canceled executions for protesters. Nobody's really buying that, and I'll be honest with you. I've seen some horrific videos coming out today. I saw literally a what you could call a summary execution, literally right on a sidewalk off the side of the street today inside of the capital of Tehran. So there's still stuff going on. Also, by the way, if there are still protesters in the street, then there's still going to be this stuff happening because it's not like the protesters suddenly disappeared, and it's not like the Iranian regime suddenly decided to be kind out of the blue. So, I mean, it's silly to claim otherwise. So, 87% said Iran is likely still executing people, while 6% said Iran likely paused the executions, as the claims are, and 4% said I'm 50-50 on this one. So, obviously, I'm with the 87%. Iran is certainly still executing people. They had no reason to stop, pretty much none. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm definitely with 87%. We've seen video evidence of it, and that speaks in and of itself that it's still happening as of today. Moving on from that, we've also been able to hear as well that apparently internet coverage has been partially restored inside of Iran, meaning that there is some limited internet access now allowed inside of the country. Moving us on further south, we have also seen that martial law is continuing to spread throughout most of the country, with internal security services being filmed in the town of Zahedan earlier today. You see them lining the sides of the streets over there.
It seems like the protests have died down. Like, obviously we don't get a whole bunch of footage because there's only like 2% internet activity inside of Iran right now. But from the very limited footage I've seen, it looks like the protests have either been cut in half or severely limited to a large degree.
And that's generally what I've seen as well. It looks as though, folks, the government in Iran has actually been given enough time to be able to put this down. And while this might resurge later and end up actually taking out the Iranian government, for now, the Iranian government does appear that it will be able to maintain some form of control. We also saw that the Balochistan independence movement has declared that they will be joining in the fight against the Iranian government. This kind of comes a little late because basically the fight against the Iranian government is almost over at this point. But they have now declared that they're going to be in a fight against the Iranian government to liberate the country from the Nazi oppressors that currently run the place. I'd have to say, though, these guys really aren't making the best argument, to say that they're liberating the country. I mean, the sort of gear that they have on really doesn't look like liberation gear. But beyond that, but beyond that, here's the clip of them talking into the microphone, just to let y'all take a look at them. Also, I got to say, folks, trigger discipline for terrorist groups and, possible terrorist groups has really improved over recent years. A lot of them used to put their finger right on the trigger, and there used to be a lot of negligent discharges all the time that would result in casualties. Nowadays, a lot of them actually follow the trigger discipline rules, making sure to keep their finger off the trigger unless they're firing.
That is pretty impressive, actually.
This guy appears to have the most jank-looking AR platform I've ever seen here at the front. This guy has some sort of an AK with a skeletal stock. This guy also does as well. That guy does. This guy has like an MP40 folding stock on the back of his AK as well as this one as well.
Yeah, also questions about their attire choices here. I think this guy up front right here might be wearing possibly a used hospital smock or something. I'm not sure really what that shirt is right there. Also, I think the guy in the back is wearing a used trash bag for his mask. That guy in the very back. There's like a lot of material going off of it. Oh, look, they were styling for the drip shot.
Oh, look at that. I just gotta ask though, are those vests like they kind of look filled with something. I'm not sure if it's mags. Like, I'm just saying, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. These people have not made a good name for themselves in Pakistan. They basically are like Al-Qaeda of Pakistan. So I will be entirely frank with y'all. I wouldn't really expect these guys to be the liberators of the Iranian people. They're very suspect groups. And also the Taliban have used them almost like dogs on the Pakistanis. Because if y'all were around when the Taliban in Pakistan went to war for a little bit, y'all will remember that they actually used the Balochistanis pretty much like attack dogs. And the Taliban would like hold them back on leash. They'd be like, hold, and they'd be like, and they'd be like, okay, get him, and then they go running across the border and basically be like the assault troops of the Taliban. It was really bizarre. Honestly, the whole thing was just the weirdest deal that happened back a couple of months ago with that. But I would say that they're, the Balochistani people, I don't like, especially the Balochistani independence group, I don't really know if they're going to be the ones that will liberate Iran. This is probably going to be like a limited hit and run sort of a battle that happens over the next several days, if it happens at all, and then they'll disappear back into the nothingness like they normally do. So with that, I hope we've addressed the internal situation in Iran, at least from what we can see today. And moving us on over and into Syria, I've got to say, folks, we've got to do it. We've got to do it, folks, because we put out analysis on this channel all the time. All the freaking time. And some people say, oh, enough of the yapping, or your opinions don't count, you don't know what you're talking about, yada yada, and on and so on. And some people just say this. And this one, folks, it doesn't get under my skin, but it stays with me. You're too young to know what you're talking about, so leave it to older people who certainly know what they're talking about. And this is one that we actually did talk about a while ago. It was a couple of weeks ago. And we've got to bring it up because I specifically was the one who was right on this analysis. I put this out weeks ago, and it ended up being exactly what the CIA is thinking. So let me go show you all what the Syrian civil war looks like right now and tell you all the lay of the land that exists in the country at the moment. So here we go. Oh, they haven't updated this map today yet. To show that the SDF is withdrawn across the Euphrates. But anyways, let me tell you all the situation. We're going to cut out all the smaller, minor factions. We're just going to talk about the big three, which is Turkey, the Syrian interim government, and the SDF. So Turkey is the group that actually funded and supported Jelani, who is the leader of the guys in the white area of the map, to take over the country and overthrow Bashar al-Assad back in late 2024. So the guys up here in yellow, they're called the SDF, which are the Syrian Democratic Forces. They're predominantly Kurdish, but there's a whole bunch of other ethnic groups that make up that force, and they're generally supported by the United States. So right now we have the US-backed SDF going up against the Turkish-backed Jelani regime. So several weeks ago, I said that Turkey and Jelani are probably going to be working together because Turkey wants to see a Turkish-aligned Syria to conduct an armed offensive against the Kurdish majority SDF. The Turks hate the Kurds, to be able to bring the entire country under the control of the Jelani regime, the force in white, and unify the entirety of Syria under a single unified banner, which will be the Syrian banner backed by the Turks. So that's generally what I said several weeks ago. The CIA report came out today, and it literally said that to a T. It said U.S. intelligence agencies have assessed that Syrian President al-Shara is planning a massive Turkish-backed military operation against the SDF in eastern Aleppo province, and military intelligence officials believe Shara has already approved the operation. It was dead on. I mean, it was smack dab on. It's exactly what was going to happen. You would have to be blind, folks, to not see that one coming around. It's exactly how the entire conflict had unfolded up until that point. We had already seen some of the prelude actions that the Turks and the SIG had conducted against the SDF. That is exactly what's going to be happening. So, with that in mind, now that we've gotten that out of the way, a lot of people have been talking about what's going to happen as a result of that. And is the Turks and Jelani going to just crush the SDF outright, which is U.S. backed, by the way, or are the Israelis going to get involved, or is the U.S. going to stop it, or are the Turks and Jelani somehow going to be defeated by the SDF? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
So it looks like this poll is all over the place. So this one is a little bit interesting because Jelani teaming up with Turkey to fight the SDF, that is interesting. The SDF is U.S. backed, by the way. We saw the U.S. forces actually retreating with the SDF earlier today, or at least allegedly they were. So that's a little strange. Jelani's now teaming up with Turkey to fight the U.S. backed SDF faction. So this is a hot mess, a big hot mess. Also, this is naturally going to trigger Israel because Israel hates Turkey and they don't want them inside of Syria. So now Jelani's teaming up with Israel's worst enemy in the region, which is Turkey, when it comes to the Syria situation. So naturally, Israel's probably going to be very livid about that. So what are your thoughts? 35% said Jelani and Turkey will demolish the SDF U.S.-backed forces, while 31% said Israel will likely get involved now that they're teaming up, and 12% said Jelani and Turkey will now get defeated. And I have a feeling that Israel is likely going to get involved. I'm with the 31%. I think they're going to be the wild card in this entire thing here. So we're not really sure what Israel's going to do, but that could upset the balance. If Israel does not get involved, then I think Jelani and Turkey will demolish the SDF forces over time. It'll probably be not exactly an easy battle, but they'll probably demolish the SDF given enough time. But once Israel gets in, who knows what's going to happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think Jelani and the Turks are going to demolish the SDF. Not a good situation, and one that I would say is a good outcome, but that's probably what's going to happen. The U.S. is probably going to just back on out of the SDF-controlled area, because right now we're in this really weird limbo. We recognize the Jelani government as the official government of a new Syria, but at the same time we still back the SDF, which we do not recognize as an official government within Syria. So that basically means right now we're in the transition of delegitimizing the SDF and putting all of our cards behind the Turkish-backed al-Jelani regime. So with that in mind, I have a feeling that we're probably just going to back out completely of Syria here in the near future and allow the Turks and the Syrian interim government to steamroll the SDF and eventually bring the whole of Syria under a unitary government and control. I don't really know if the Israelis will get involved in that because the SDF isn't really a dog that they back. They actually don't really care for them that much. The Israelis care a lot for the Druze down here in the As-Sawaida government, but that's a whole different group and an entirely different faction than the SDF. So I have a feeling that if the U.S. backs out, the Turks are probably going to help steamroll the SDF, and the Israelis might not really get involved that much at all. The only time we've seen the Israelis get involved was when the Turks claimed they were going to create military bases within central Syria. And then that's when we saw that they got involved for a little bit, and they had a bit of a standoff with the Turks. But I don't think the Israelis would get involved in seeing the SDF get crushed, because the SDF isn't really a group that is incredibly friendly to the Israelis, and the Israelis don't really like the SDF. So With that, I hope that does
What
address it.
what's up with this though? Like this is the part that I don't understand. The U.S. is working diplomatically with Jelani, who's the current Syrian president, who's the former HTS terrorist group leader. So they're working with him. He's now the legitimate leader in the country. So diplomatically on that front, the U.S. is involved. But also at the same time, though, the SDF, which is opposed to Jelani, which we're diplomatically backing, is fighting against him. And our forces are generally teamed up with the SDF fighting against Jelani, who is diplomatically backed by the United States. It seems like we're fighting both sides to a degree, which makes zero sense.
Yeah, it does make zero sense because historically we viewed the HTS as a terrorist group, and because it was Turkish backed and it was a terrorist group, and not really because it was Turkish backed, but because it was a terrorist group and it was a offshoot of Al Qaeda and also a bit of an offshoot of ISIS because al-Baghdadi, who was the general leader of Al Qaeda at the time that gave the writ of permission to al-Jilani to create the HTS at Idlib, he then went on to become the founder and leader of ISIS. Al-Baghdadi did. So generally, this group that al-Jilani led to victory at the end of the Syrian civil war was pretty much an Al-Qaeda ISIS spinoff, basically. So we viewed them quite hostilely throughout the entirety of the Civil War and did not look at them well at all. We looked at the SDF pretty fairly and pretty decently because the SDF, out of all the factions in the region, folks, was the most American aligned and also the most aligned with our interests, really the best way to put it that way. So we backed them up throughout the entirety of the Syrian civil war. If you ever saw a fight that happened in Syria and U.S. forces were involved, we were usually involved backing Syrian Democratic forces on the field. Now in the modern day, though, and this is something, once again, folks, that I have to say is a bit of a failing, is that in late 2024, when the Assad regime collapsed, and I have to say the names of the presidents, folks, this isn't getting political, this is just making sure to lay out the timeline clearly for folks. When the Assad regime collapsed, Biden was the one who actually took Jelani and the HTS off of the terrorist designation list in the State Department in the very latter end of his term because the Syrian civil war had ended, and generally we were kind of trying to look for the strongest dog at that point that was left to kind of put our cards behind, and that was basically Jelani. At that point, the telltale signs that Jelani was still basically a terrorist at heart were kind of showing up, but it wasn't really anything that big yet. The real signs of that would show up after he was removed from the terrorist designation list in very late December and early January, when the Alawite Arabs started to conduct a revolt against his government, and then massacres started to be conducted against the Alawite Arabs on the coast. That was really the first point, especially on this channel, that we're like, hey, this guy might still be a terrorist, actually, because that does not look like a way to deal with a different interest group or a minority group in the country. Is just straight up massacring them because they don't like your governance. And then on top of that, he then started to conduct a massacre on the Druze not that long after, about the spring of last year in 2025. But even still, once Trump became the president, we saw that none of the U.S. actions in the State Department that Biden was already making on legitimizing Jelani's rule in Syria was being backed off of. If anything, the Trump administration took it and continued onwards with it, still putting more emphasis behind Jelani, inviting him to the United States for an official state visit, among many other things. And we've seen that generally nowadays we're moving a lot of our support towards Jelani and his guys, more so than the SDF. So the U.S. forces that are in SDF-controlled territory, at least at this point, are almost a holdover of like the last 10 years of the Syrian civil war, but really don't reflect the current U.S. position on who we back in the region, because we back Jelani these days more than we do the SDF guys up in the Northeast.
It seems like we're keeping both of our options open, like his leverage, like against Jelani, in case Jelani goes sideways, which obviously is not super trustworthy. He has a sketchy background, to say the least. It seems like we're sort of like staying with the SDF to a degree. So that way, if Jelani goes sideways, then we can just push the SDF to go do something about it. It seems a little bit weird to do that, though, considering that those forces that Jelani is supporting are attacking the SDF, which is where our forces are located. But I think that maybe is the logic behind it, if there is any logic behind it at all.
Yeah, I would have to say. Also, I saw Lomain ask, wasn't and isn't Turkey aligned with Russia? No, Turkey really isn't aligned with anybody, and that's what makes them the wild card in the region, is that while Turkey is officially a part of NATO and has some significant economic relations with the EU Customs Union, while not being an active, full participant of the European Union or a member of the EU at all, they still have significant relations with the EU. They also have significant economic relations with the Russian Federation as well, basically being meaning that they're almost like the middle of the road in this area because they have significant relations with both. They also conduct significant operations of their own interests inside of the Middle East, which do not align with U.S. interests and don't really align with NATO's interests or the Western Sphere's interests as a whole. That's why here on the channel, Lomain, we actually have the phrase "Turkey does Turkey things," because Turkey is it's a very long and in-depth sort of rabbit hole. It takes about an hour to actually explain why they're like that, because it's actually very intricate and in-depth as to how they turned out to be this way. But they basically are a wild card and they do their own thing. Whether it aligns with Russia's interest one day, it's just by coincidence. If it aligns with our interest the other day, that's just raw coincidence. They're entirely out for themselves and don't really consider anyone else in their foreign policy decision-making, and that's why Turkey isn't really Russian aligned, but they're also not really NATO aligned. So as far as the Syrian situation goes, we can't really look at them as a Western aligned or a Russian aligned enemy that's working either for our interest or against our interest. They're working for their own interest, completely separate from everyone else. And so I would say that that has to be looked at least in this scenario, with great suspicion. And we shouldn't look at Turkish actions as being beneficial to the United States, but we also shouldn't look at them as being detrimental to our interests, like, say, bringing the Russians back in, because the Turks don't have that kind of a heavy relationship with the Russians. So I hope that answers your question well, because that's something that is very confusing to a lot of people, because Turkey is a weird country in foreign policy. But moving on from that, we are going to be getting on into the news from the ground inside of Syria today. We did see that the Syrian interim government's forces, we'll call these al-Jilani's guys, because the SIG and the SDF are very similar sounding, so we'll just try and make it a little bit more clear. Al-Jilani's guys conducted a rocket attack on the SDF at Deir Hafir, which is on Highway 4 heading towards the Euphrates today, with MLRS fire, which is seen in this clip. That was then followed by direct infantry battles on the western outskirts of the town, with video footage also being seen of that right here as well. Someone was getting dial-up right there at the beginning. Oh, and it's Syria, of course.
And that guy's loud.
Man, man, like, damn.
He was echoing off the concrete, like, across the block.
Bro, like, this guy's got the megaphone. Like, bro. Yeah, like,
oh, no, dude.
Wow. Kind of hype.
Wow.
Man. One of them, so I go, gra, gra,
You don't want to call that over towards you, okay? Don't whistle for that.
Yeah, I don't think you do. I think you keep a little quiet here.
They call him the missile whisperer. He's literally whistling for the missile.
Oh, and here, there's the dial-up tone again, so we made it back to the beginning of the clip. We also were able to see this. Moving on from those clips, we also got some additional clips as well of the fighting inside of Deir Hafir. Here's the clip.
If this was the Russians, they would say it's simply a bad thunderstorm.
Yeah, falling debris and all that business. A thunderstorm in the desert. That would be very Russian, though, to say.
This is a peace desert. There's no peace out here.
Man, nothing grows out here! But also we saw that American MRAPs way earlier on the day, before the battles actually happened, had actually arrived within Deir Hafir, and we actually have two different clips. This one shows them in the town, and the other one shows them going towards the town on Highway 4 heading west. We'll get to that one here in a second.
الآن رتل المشترك بين قوات سوريا الديمقراطية والتحالف الدولي يجول في مدينة دير حافر. هو رتل المشترك بين قوات سوريا الديمقراطية والتحالف الدولي.
I don't know why, but her tone sounds kind of confused. She's like, the Americans are here? Like, it's like, oh, yes, they are. That's the American flag.
الآن الرتل يقف أمام المجلس المدني في مدينة دير حافر مجلس مدينة دير حافر.
Oh, the Chevy
Oh, man.
Suburban. That's
Oh
like,
man.
man.
I don't know, is that like electronic warfare or something, or is that not connected to our guys?
Oh no, Matthew, that's something even better. BlackRock.
No, not BlackRock. You mean you're talking about like a PMC, right?
Oh yeah, I'm just talking about any general PMC, but you know,
Oh yeah, BlackRock's an investment company. That's not
oh,
a
I'm
PMC.
sorry. I'm talking about Blackwater. Like that's what I'm talking about. There we go. That was a mess up. But anyways, moving on. We also got to see them racing down Highway 4 earlier on in the day, and I mean racing to get there. So here's that clip.
Oh damn! What's that chopper sound? Is that a machine gun?
I think this is a construction site.
Oh dang!
Bro, this guy took a break from work to film this. Here comes another. I mean, for these kinds of armored cars, folks, these things are going all out. I think that's about as fast as they can actually go. That's the end of that. Oh, is that a Bobcat skid steer in the wild of Syria?
Oh, it sure is. It's a real janky one though, but I guess it counts.
Yo, I never thought we'd see that. But moving on from that, we then saw that after the battle happened that we just showed you all a moment ago, and then we saw later on in the afternoon that U.S. forces were then, the very same column, mind you all, was then leaving Dire Hafer after an agreement has now been made that SDF forces will completely withdraw from everywhere east of the Euphrates and will only hold their positions on the other side of the Euphrates River.
It is interesting though that there appears to be like sort of like civilian vehicles following this convoy. That's kind of fascinating.
It is kind of fascinating. It's always interesting how, you know, there's always a little civilian crowd following around. But anyways, moving on from that, it does appear that as of today, the Syrian Civil War map will have to be updated because now the SDF is apparently only going to be holding positions across the Euphrates River. So everything including Dire Hafer, the Sheikh Massoud neighborhood, and also other regions, including Al Mansura, which are also under the control of the SDF, will all be abandoned to the Syrian interim government, with the SDF only controlling the very northeastern corner of the country. So that is currently the situation that we know of as of today within the area. Moving on out from that and on into the rest of our news, we're now going to be moving on over to the Americas because we have news in America. First and foremost, we have been able to hear is our big news of the day that a NOTAM has now been issued by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. I've got to say, folks, American Airlines paint jobs, the old one and the new one, are some of my favorite in civil aviation. But outside of that stock image that was put in here, which basically has nothing to do with the issuance of the statement, they have issued a notice to airmen, a NOTAM, for the airspace over Mexico and parts of Central and South America, including Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama, urging airlines to exercise caution over the region due to military activity and potential interference to navigation systems, with the NOTAMs going into effect on January 16th, which is today, and lasting until March 17th, a month later. Well, actually 2 months later, sorry, in 2026. So there is now a NOTAM basically over the entirety of Central and Northern South America. So a little bit of an interesting thing to hear in the meantime. And we don't know if that means that U.S. military action is going to be commencing against Mexico and other states within the region, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on from that, we've also been able to see additional footage that was published today of the seizure of the MT Veronica, which we can see in this clip right here. Also, so wait, hold up. CENTCOM is now putting trap beats over our footage.
Well, yeah, it got better than that. There was a like a not a propaganda, but like a recruitment video that they put out yesterday from the Department of War, and they had like drill beats, like drill rap, like legit drill rap in the background.
Oh boy, oh man, they're real traditional values right there. But anyways, well, you can see the Seahawks flying in. I would assume they're Seahawks when you see the Special Forces teams rappelling in new footage that was just put out today. We now see them seizing the bridge and control of the ship.
That's a lot of guys we sent on that ship to take it over. I would imagine there's not probably any resistance they're probably forming to the U.S. forces. Oh, what the hell? Oh, damn! Look at this outro though. They're really getting into this.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. You know, I feel like this outro is gonna be not really well received by folks who may have epilepsy. But beyond that, really interesting outro nonetheless. But moving on from that, we are also going to be moving on and up into the area of Washington, D.C. Because we've also been able to hear in a really weird deal, and this is just like a side note for everyone, that a U.S. investment fund has demanded $225 billion from Russia for imperial debts. According to this Russian statement, an American investment fund called Noble Capital RSD is demanding a repayment of $225 billion in obligations related to Russian imperial bonds from 1916, which was the last year that the Russian Empire existed before it devolved into civil war. The investment fund filed a lawsuit in a U.S. court naming the Russian Federation, the Ministry of Finance, and Central Bank, and the National Welfare Fund as defendants. The lawsuit was filed in the District of Columbia Court and was brought to RBC's attention. The Russian Federation, in violation of the doctrine of succession of power, has refused and continues to refuse to fulfill certain obligations under the state debts incurred by its predecessor, the Russian Empire, the document states. Noble Capital RSD claims to own $25 million in Russian Empire bonds with a 5.5% coupon, issued through National City Bank in New York. According to the plaintiff, Russia, as the legal successor to the USSR, inherited debts estimated at least $225 billion, including interest. That's a lot of interest right there on that $25 million. But the fund proposes to repay the debt using Russian assets frozen after 2014 and 2022. Russian authorities have not yet commented on the lawsuit.
So that's how they're trying to collect. That was the part right there I was wondering about. So they're going to try to collect out the frozen Russian assets. But the problem is, though, has the U.S. Really frozen them yet? Because I know Europe has frozen assets, but the U.S. hasn't, to my knowledge.
I think we have, actually. I think there is some frozen assets in U.S. possession from like back in 2022 and 2023, I think. It's just that we don't really hear about them a lot.
Interesting. So let me try to do some quick research on this. You can go ahead and continue. I'm going to see if I can find out what the U.S. has seized, but that seems a little bit crazy. That means the U.S. would actually have to liquidate like $225 billion worth of that. I mean, that's a lot of money right there. And also, it's like an imperial debt from what year? Like, what year is this allegedly from?
1916.
1916. I'm like, is that even something that can be collected on anymore? Like, I'm not really sure like how that works.
Me either. I gotta say, though, if this is actually what Noble Capital is doing, I gotta say that's quite noble of them. They sat there and they had their accounts go through and go, oh, these loans, they haven't been paid for 110 years. That means, click, $225 billion like, are owed to us. Like, I'm honestly gotta say, that's a pretty interesting one right there. We'll have to see how that pans out, but very, very interesting to hear. But moving on out of the U.S. Capital, at least for the moment, it does appear that at least for the moment, the United States is also hearing of a very interesting little development down in Caracas, as we have been able to see that the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, actually met with Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, in Caracas on Thursday. Very interesting, folks. It appears that we're basically taking Maduro's underling, the vice president, who's now the acting president, as the official leader of Venezuela. That also means that Maria Corina Machado appears to be, quite unfortunately, out of the running to be able to be the next leader of Venezuela. I have to say that it's very sad to see that Maria Corina Machado is no longer in the running for the office of the president of Venezuela. It's always a tragedy to hear that someone who who wants a position so badly, including giving a Nobel Peace Prize to someone to try and put themselves in that position, would end up getting it for naught. I guess in the end, they kind of got played. And I would have to be honest, if you get played like that, I mean, you know, that's I got to just be straight up. I really don't have a lot of sympathy for that. You know,
it looks played big time out there, really. Also, go back to that photo for a second. I want to point something out real quick, because I think they kind of messed up with this a little bit. So see the guy there that's blurred out, that's on the left right there?
Yeah.
Two people away.
Like
that guy right there. they gotta remember that when you blur out somebody's face, you gotta blur out their hair. Like that's a huge way you can identify somebody, and you can tell this guy is definitely bald based on this right here. So I'm not gonna say who this individual is, by the way, but you can still identify who that guy is, even with this very light blurring that he has on his face. So like maybe some like a black sensor bar or something might be appropriate, so that way you can't make out who this guy is. Because I think anybody with any type of skill could figure out who that guy still is.
We are the storm. Like a Japan. Like
Might want to use a like a marker or something next time for the blur instead of like this little blur effect they got going on.
Also, I gotta say, Delcy Rodriguez coming out here with a high vis suit. I've never seen a official suit in high vis before. That's news to me. I think that's probably going to become standard issue at Army balls here in the future in the United States. Because the Army's all into that high vis. God forbid a driver can't see you out in the middle of a dark night. God knows where, like mowing the lawn or whatever. So, that's a little bit interesting right there. And I also got to say, folks. I've really ended up, folks, not really being that big of a fan of Maria Corina Machado, because I'm just going to be kind of upfront, folks. The president had already made it clear that after kind of like, in a sense, using her to get Maduro and also kind of get their way in Venezuela, they were done with her and they had no use for her anymore and they were throwing her aside. So in her desperate bid to still try and be in the running to eventually be the leader of Venezuela, she ends up getting punked and giving away her Nobel medal for no reason at all. And then still doesn't end up being the leader of Venezuela. And it doesn't sound like elections are going to be taking place anytime soon in Venezuela either, basically meaning that country's still going to be run by the Maduro regime indefinitely. So because of that, I've got to say, Maria Corina Machado kind of went out on a bad note, just being completely frank. I mean, if you're that desperate for power that you're willing to blindly get punked when it was obvious, that's not really a good look for someone. I'd have to say she probably wouldn't have been that good of a leader of Venezuela, in my opinion. Probably would have ended up just being the next Maduro, but in a different form. So that's what I would have to say. I don't really think too highly of that. But anyways. With that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my personal opinion. But beyond that, though, we do understand that there are a lot of people right now who are talking about that little NOTAM that was issued. And when I mean little, it's like one of the largest NOTAMs ever issued over the entirety of Central America and most of northern South America. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well? And what that might mean?
Okay, so the big, mysterious, massive NOTAM alerts, actually several different NOTAMs that were issued over Mexico and parts of South America today that are going to endure for about 2+ months. So that makes it pretty much impossible to figure out exactly when something's going to occur because it's a very long duration NOTAM, multiple NOTAMs actually. So what are your thoughts and what is this? 47% said U.S. strikes are likely coming soon on probably cartel targets, while 29% said it's simply a bluff and a negotiating tactic, and 13% said it's about a new military threat. And I'm with the 29%. I think this is clearly a bluff. It's clearly a negotiating tactic. I do not believe that U.S. strikes are imminent because striking Mexico carries a lot of consequences with it. And also it's going to cause a shit show, to say the least. So I don't think for a second that they're about to start striking Mexico. Even over the next 2 months, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they're simply trying to use this as a way to intimidate the Mexican government into compliance. So I'm with the 29%. It's probably a negotiating tactic, and it'll probably remain like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I think as a negotiating tactic, striking anything in Mexico is going to come with severe consequences. It's an $850 billion trade market that we're involved in. Hitting anything in Mexico will start to jeopardize that trade market and logistics supply line, which is not good. So I would say that it's most likely some form of negotiating tactic, more so than anything, in my opinion, because anything else would make no sense. Although that has not stopped the current administration from making plenty of bad decisions, the fact that something makes no sense, this would make so little sense. This would be a bad idea, because if we do that, not only are we alienating the largest national trading market that we work with, which is the Mexicans, we are also, if we invade Greenland, going to be completely alienating the largest trading bloc we work with in the world, which is the European Union simultaneously, which would be absolutely disastrous in every angle. So I would have to say I think it's more so for negotiations as well, more so than legitimate strikes that'll be coming here in the future. And also, I know some people are going to be like, well, they'll probably just sit back and take it. No, there's something going on with this here in that If the Mexican president does not allow us to bomb something in Mexico, if we bomb something in Mexico, we're violating their sovereignty. It doesn't even matter if it's for a good reason. Like we could say, like for example, folks, if Hitler was alive right now and he was in Britain, if we still drone striked Hitler in Britain, that the British would still make a huge issue over that because we violated their sovereignty, didn't get any permission from them, and bombed their own territory. That's a huge deal no matter what cause it's for any country in the world. So if you go down to Mexico and you start bombing them out of the blue and they didn't give you permission to do that, even if it's for a good point, which is bombing the cartels, the Mexicans are going to retaliate, not through armed action, because remember everyone, armed action is the only way people can retaliate. They can retaliate economically. They can start to put embargoes on trade with the United States. They can start to cut off any sort of specific forms of trade that'll damage the United States heavily. And then at that point, we either have to escalate and then we have to conduct an armed invasion of Mexico, which can be incredibly costly and even more damaging than the economic sanctions that Mexico could leverage against us, or we have to back off, which then doesn't really look that good for the United States. So there's really no good way that this thing can turn out. Or we can continue on with bombing stuff in Mexico and then continue to take more and more action until the entire $850 billion trade that we have with them basically evaporates into nothing over the next several years, which is not going to be good for us either. So I would have to say it's just not a good idea to follow through with that. There's a lot of other ways that we can do it. At least stopping the flow of drugs into the United States. But I would say that there's not really many ways that we could do that by bombing Mexico that would turn out well. So with that in mind, a lot of people are talking about what would be a worse foreign policy idea. And I think, Matthew, you just came up with this one on spot because that seems to me like something that was quickly thought about. And you're like, I wonder what people are thinking about that. And actually, interesting enough, this is heavily leaning in one direction more so than the other. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
So this is a bit of a social experiment. Let's see which one the people think is worse, because obviously, as I see many people saying in the live chat, both of them are absolutely abominable choices. They're both terrible. Both of them would be highly detrimental to the U.S. Interest, but that's not stopping anybody from at least proposing these ideas, which is insane, because neither one of these ideas right here I thought was going to be on the table this year, but here we are. We are sitting here actually legitimately discussing how bad these would be, which is crazy. But 76% said U.S. forces invading Greenland would be the worst foreign policy idea, while 24% said U.S. forces airstriking Mexico would be the worst one. And I'm with the 76%. Out of the two, Greenland would be a much worse situation because that would implode the NATO alliance, and we're about to pretty much go into World War III, and we're already probably in the early stages of it. And imploding NATO at this time would be it'd probably finish the United States off, to be perfectly honest. That would probably finish us off if we got into a major war with Russia and China. So airstriking Mexico would certainly be a major economic issue for certain, but I think militarily right now, we got to focus a lot more on the military side of things for certain. So the Greenland one is worse, but they're both very bad. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree the Greenland one is far worse than the Mexican situation, but both of them would be terrible if followed through on at all. Both of them will end up with absolutely disastrous consequences. And also, I just gotta say this, folks. This is something so interesting to me. Never in any of y'all's lives, and I'm not talking to all of you, I'm just talking to a small group of people I see in the chat. Never in any of y'all's lives has it ever been considered a possibility for the U.S. to necessitate an invasion of Greenland or the bombing of cartels in Mexico as an actual premise of foreign policy that's ever been in public debate. This is brand new, these two topics, meaning that there's basically no precedent for this in U.S. public discussion. So I gotta say that it's always weird to me to watch that this stuff is brand new, has never been talked about as something that needs to be done, but some people bandwagon really hard and they go, we can invade Mexico now and then deal with Greenland later, or we can invade Greenland now and deal with Mexico later, because neither one of these are things that we have to do. If anything, these are things that we don't have to do. Nobody's ever brought this up before because, surprise, surprise, these are idiotic ideas and very stupid. And that's why nobody's even brought these up before for them to be discussed. It's only because the current president is off its rocker or something like that, that this is even a point of discussion to where we're saying, oh, should we invade Greenland or Mexico? The answer is neither. That's the real answer to this, is instead of having to pick one or the other, we don't have to pick either. We just say no. It's a bad idea. We're either completely alienating the second largest military power in the world in terms of nuclear arms and conventional arms in Europe, along with all of their trade, which isn't going to be good for us, or we're completely alienating the largest national trading partner that we work with, which is Mexico. Both of those are terrible ideas. So I would have to say, I don't know why some people make it sound like, we have to do one or the other, or we have to do both of them, and we have to figure out how to manage them. Both of them are going to end up disastrously. Like, if we should be talking about anything, the real discussion should be, who in the world is our biggest threat right now? Iran, Russia, or China? That's the real sort of metric that we should be working on in foreign policy, instead of which one of our major trading and military allies are we going to piss off first, NATO or Mexico? So like,
yeah, that's a huge thing too. Also, by the way, like, I hate to even say this because I don't even like to think about it too deep, because I hope it doesn't happen. But if the U.S. Invaded Greenland and tried to take it, and then the NATO alliance fractured, which it would almost certainly fracture at that point, they've already said it would, and also basically Article 5 would be enacted against the United States, so we'd have the entirety of Europe warring with the United States to get us the hell off of Greenland. In that case, the U.S. would basically be forced to ally with Russia at that point. The U.S. would basically have to do it because we're getting attacked by Europe in defense. So it would force the United States and Russia together, which would be the most insane turn of events you've ever seen. And also one of the worst, because we don't want to be allied with Russia. They want to not only take Europe, they want to take us out too, along with China. So it's just like terrible things. The Greenland situation is like just the tip of the iceberg. Like, taking Greenland in itself, that doesn't sound too crazy until you look at all the stuff that's underneath that issue that becomes horrific once Greenland starts becoming a major problem if we invade it.
yeah, that's true. And I also saw someone say, what are you talking about? Greenland's been cooperating with us. What's benevolent? Greenland has not been cooperating with us because Greenland doesn't have any ability to speak with the United States on foreign policy matters, because due to the Danish laws that exist in Greenland, Greenland cannot manage Greenland's foreign policy. The Kingdom of Denmark manages Greenland's foreign policy position, and also its foreign dealings and affairs. So there's no set, so you're just coming up with bogus to people who say that, because Greenland can't even talk to the United States because illegally they're not allowed to by their own constitution and laws within that territory. So I don't know where people are getting that one from. That literally cannot happen. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving out of the Americas, and we are going to be moving on into Europa and into the war in Ukraine in the front line, so we haven't been able to cover yet. Moving us on into Britain, though, we did get to see that they tested out their brand new autonomous helicopter today, the Proteus, which is a full-scale drone helicopter. This is actually pretty cool.
I'm not sure if we can show this, by the way.
Oh, we can? Well,
I'm not totally sure. I'm not sure of the source.
Well, what are the charges? Enjoying video? A succulent British video? How dare you, sir? But anyways, moving on from that, unfortunately, we might not be able to show that. We are going to be moving on into the war in Ukraine. We have a lot of news to cover here, folks. Moving us on into our location unknowns, we have been able to see the Ukrainian helicopters flying over the fields with the loud drum and bass playing overhead. Pretty cool. Here comes the next one.
That is cool. Look at how they fly these things like school buses.
Man, impressive. Moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see a Swedish-made CV-90 in Ukrainian military service in the snow, which looks really cool, so I had to show that picture. It was just a neat one. We also have the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, and holy moly!
Oh my goodness, they've got 2 more Bobcats. That's crazy work. They haven't gotten a Bobcat in a minute. Like, it's crazy. They got some today on Friday of all nights. They had to do it for Friday night special.
Man, they had to do it. They had to do it. Over the course of the past 24 hours, folks, according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, UAV losses dropped, but total is still over 10,000 this month to date. Troop losses rises, and other categories are at or above average. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to confirm that 1,370 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 4 APCs, 180 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 48 artillery pieces, 527 drones, 3 MLRSs, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, a pretty decent day, all things considered, hard, and you definitely will see that when we move to the front. Up near the Kupiansk area, the Ukrainians in the 151st Motorized Rifle Brigade were able to conduct a little raid, and it went well. Oh, we're going to have to mute that. Oh, but there they go, passing a destroyed vehicle and several more. But they are not going to end up joining these destroyed vehicles today, folks, because they're on a raid.
Oh, raid! Oh, wow, look at that. That's a nice AR. Oh, that was nice. They have a scope on that thing. That's nice. Oh, they have a little weapon light on the side. I like that, too.
Oh,
They got proper camo.
That's my surefire tack light, Matthew.
These guys right here are kitted. They must be a more elite unit.
Every unit in the Ukrainian army is kitted, except for the TDFs. And even some of those are kind of equipped well these days.
The TDFs?
The TDF, the Territorial Defense Forces.
I was about to say.
I was about to say, someone's getting really loony about me now. Oh, man. Smart people don't like me.
Is this that's a door? I thought it was a bank vault door for me. I was about to say, this guy's ripping over the bank vault.
Man, they build those houses sturdy up in Ukraine, I tell you. The darkness consumes.
Oh, they got some nice camo. Look at that. You don't see the Russians with that. They wish they had some.
Man, those winter smokes. Man, they're nice. And effective. You know, I feel like we saw a part of this clip yesterday. Like this part starting right here. Yeah, we did. There they are taking the prisoners.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to see the rest of the clip leading up to this, though, today. So we'll show this little part again. We see them processing the prisoners as they did yesterday. And searching them for gear and equipment that they might use to harm someone. To be continued. And we can't wait. Moving on from that, now the Kupiansk front, and further on down the line and into the Seversk area, we also were able to see the Ukrainians in the 81st Air Mobile Brigade striking and destroying Russian forces. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, it's a Russian in winter camo, and it didn't even help him.
Oh my God! Look at that. He was actually kind of somewhat invisible, actually, for a second, but not so invisible. They found him anyway.
Bro, the Ukrainians got those laser eyes. They said, "Did I see you running?" Like, and flew in the drone. It's like, man, yeah, you're not running away.
And he knew he thought he was lucky. You know, he thought he was lucky because he was like one of the few ones with it. Like the other guys are just out here in normal green camo.
We see them hitting the netting, and hitting the outposts, and hitting this Russian in the weeds, and hitting this Russian in the pipe.
One in the pipe.
You got enough coin for that?
You got to put a can on that rifle.
You got soft hands, Murray. Ever I've been working in the coal mines for 16-hour shifts. My boss pays me minimum wage. I'm a real man. I get screwed by my boss, and I'm proud of it.
48 hours in the ball crushing factory changes your mindset to a grind set.
Well, you've been working on YouTube for 60, 70 hours a week. That's cute. I work 120 hours at $7.25 an hour at the ball crushing factory where they crush my balls. But moving on down into Touretsk, we also were able to see the 100th Battalion. Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. Apparently that one's a little juicy. I didn't see that earlier when I watched it, but apparently it is. We also got to see this Ukrainian FPV knocking out this electronic warfare system on top of this Russian transport truck. Remember, folks, make sure to wear high-vis. But anyways, moving on to the front near Pokrovsk, while Matthew really got shocked by that EW system getting knocked out. He went, oh! But we are also able to see those Russian cavalry on the front as well. Take a look at this. Oh, and they're playing that Chad music while they ride horses. Because we all know that cavalry warfare in the 21st century is Chad-like, you know? Real red-pilled or blue-pilled or whatever the hell it is.
Look at him go. He's got the whole horse and the whole get up.
Blood feels like a little cowboy out here. Look at him.
That horse doesn't look like it's wanting to act right for some reason.
I think the ATV was spooking it a little bit. ATV man feels lucky until that FPV singles him out, because it's easier to get him on the ATV than to dismount these guys from the horses. But moving on from that and on to Novopavlivka, we also were able to see them hitting some Russian forces within this area in Novopavlivka, just south of Pokrovsk. We can see this angry.
Oh, they got that mad dog. Look at that. That's crazy.
Man, like,
I don't even think that's a coyote. I think that's a wolf.
man, I think that's like some sort of deranged, like, Cujo dog right there.
I've heard that's what happens to those dogs. Like, you know, those dogs that happen to come across like the bad, like the wrong stash or something like that. Like, you know, in the wrong place, they happen to start getting a little crazed like that.
Man, you know, that's when you feed them the wrong type of kibble right there. Oh, and the Russians are trying to make a break for it.
Oh, look at this. They're going through the mud. This ain't gonna work. Oh, no.
Oh,
No. Oh, he actually got away. That's crazy.
The one that got away. Oh, my Lord.
Didn't play. Well, they were lying in wait. They just got him sitting over here. Look at this thing. Look at that. They had like mud flaps on the side.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty crazy. Also, by the way, I got to cut this clip short, folks, because there's some parts at the end here that I cannot show y'all. But moving on from that and on up into the area of Pokrovsk, we also got to see them hitting the Russian forces within this area. This is part of the 4th Operational Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Ooh!
Oh, damn.
And that's the end of that clip, but still showing us that the battles in Pokrovsk are still going strong. From what we understand, the Russian Federation is still not gaining any ground within Pokrovsk at the moment. It also appears that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to solidify some form of a defensive line near to the area of the railway yards within the central area of the city on the northern side, and are also holding the northern part of Mirnohrad, meaning that the Russians are generally not able to make any ground in these areas, and they're still taking fairly significant losses to even attempt to make any ground. Moving on down and into Mariupol, we also saw that the Ukrainians hit the electrical substations here and have created a significant blackout.
У меня просто на 23-й вот он. И работает вот этот генератор, а вот он тебе 23-й, нихуя света нет.
This is just so terrible.
Man, there was a little piano playing in the background. The Oogly Boo creature was about to show up like the Skinwalker or whatever and, you know, started nabbing people in the darkness. But anyways, moving on out of Mariupol, that is actually, folks, almost all of the news that we have from around the world. But I have to bring y'all to China, because we've saved this one for last before we get to the speech from Zelensky. And I have a feeling a lot of y'all are going to get a real hoot out of this one. A real hoot. Because it is hilarious. Like, I'm not exaggerating by any measure. This is hilarious. The Chinese have published a video today with some pretty crap music showing them training to defend themselves against FPV drone warfare. Let's watch the clip and see what they view as proper defense against FPV drones. There it goes. And apparently dodging plywood sticks swinging in the air is a big part of training.
Man, those are just 2x4s. Those are very expensive, by the way, 2x4s. That's a rare commodity now.
I mean, really? I mean, you see them crawling under him. We can also see this guy, apparently...
Oh, the pendulum drone. You always got to be careful about those. Those are real common in the battlefield, those pendulum drones.
And we all know, folks, that the trick to a drone that's stuck on a string is clearly just to hit the ground, because it's not like it's going to circle back and get you while you're trying to get up off the ground and try and run away. So this clearly works. And then we also saw this next clip of someone running and then sliding behind a pile. And oh my god, bro! Like,
man, that thing was going to decapitate somebody. Jeez, that thing was moving. Also, by the way, I'm like, what kind of crappy drone operators are they expecting to be fighting against? If it was a Ukrainian operator, they'd have simply slammed it straight into that little support they was hiding behind.
Yeah, man. You know what they would have done, man? They would have slowed it down and toyed with him a little bit, and then hit him. Like, that's usually what they do. But now we can see the guy booking it again and hiding behind a log. And we all know, folks, that in the Ukraine war, when you hide behind a tree, like the movies or something, the drone can't hit you, although it could. So it has to circle around you and give you a little bit of time to shoot it down. In real life, in Ukraine, this drone would just slam right into the tree and get you. So this wouldn't work either in real life. This guy,
Oh
like,
yeah, look at that.
for
He's,
some
he's
reason,
gonna do a little around the pole. He's doing a pole dancing defense tactic.
bruh, the Chinese think that kung fu and karate works against drones, like the same sort of principles. Like they're like, if you have enough chi, you'll be able to defeat. It's like, no, that's not how this works. It's like that drone's gonna get you. This is why, folks, I think the Chinese might actually be combat ineffectual, is because their training really works more so in fiction than reality.
Really, there's no reason at all to like practice defense against drones. There's really no way to do that because these things are way too maneuverable and a soldier can't outrun it. So I'm not really sure if there's a point to this.
The only real defense, folks, against a drone is having enough shotguns and enough shots in the air to try and take it down, or having effective electronic warfare. If you don't have one of those two things, you're screwed. There's no point in you doing any of this stuff. It will get you, and all you're doing is wearing yourself out until the drone hits you when you get exhausted. So, but I do have to say, though, folks, check out that roll.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
Man, this guy did this so that way he could point his ass right up in the air so that way the drone could hit him that way. I mean, a brand new form. When you see him getting into the foxhole here, as we all know, there's always pre-prepared foxholes on the battlefield, and then shooting the drone, and then running away. So I'll just be straight up with y'all, folks. I don't really think the Chinese got this whole, defending themselves against FPV drone thing down all too well. As a matter of fact, I don't really think they got the whole drone thing down that well. I think it's more so propaganda. Because when you actually watch this in practice, there's no way in hell that any of this would work in real life. None of it would. We just know that from Ukraine. So, yeah, I think the Chinese are once again just trying to hype themselves up and gas themselves up to make people think, oh my God, they really know what's going on. No,
The goofy part is the Chinese have sent military observers to Ukraine before to go observe what's going on, so that they get to see the same footage we're seeing, like on the internet. They can study the same footage, and if they don't have enough sense to look at the footage and realize that these lame like training tactics they're trying to do is not going to help anybody, then I'm like, apparently China's not figuring out anything or learning anything from the war.
Yeah, I mean, they're not learning a single... Honestly, man, I'll be straight up with you. I think China and the United States are very slow to learn on the whole drone warfare side of things, because both sides are very competent in their more so orthodox capabilities, and they're not really getting that big into it. Because, China's drone ship is using larger drones still, even, like the container ship. It's not using small FPVs or Shahed type drones. It's like larger recon drones and strike drones, from basically yesteryear. It's like, it's not anything that's using anything modern at all. And it's like, and with the United States, it's like, we're developing Shaheds, like basically a Shahed drone, but almost in like an artisanal production form where it's like one a week that's being built instead of thousands of them a week. I gotta be honest with y'all. I think if we went to war with China right now, I think it'd be like amateur hour, at least on the drone warfare side of things, between China and the United States, because I don't really think either one of their militaries are really getting a good grasp on that whole deal. The Russians, I will say this, the Russians actually do have a very strong grasp on drone warfare compared to China or us at the moment, because they're having to deal with that with the Ukrainians right now, and they also do have their own drone forces that are operating not as well as Ukraine's, but they're kind of similar to some degrees. But Ukraine is the master of drone warfare right now on the planet. Like, if you go up against them in the kind of warfare that's happening in Ukraine right now, they will best you every day, because there's no way that anyone right now in the world doctrinally has the kind of developed drone warfare tactics and strategies that the Ukrainians implement on the battlefield. So that is vital technology that we need to get in our possession, and also need to learn how to use as quickly as we possibly can, because that is a winner of a war right there, especially if it ever turns into some form of infantry battle on the ground. Drone warfare is a must and a necessity. But moving on from that and on into Ukraine, it's time for us to get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, none other than President Volodymyr Zelensky. Did you just see that, Matthew, on the recommend video? It just showed the Wardenburger on the left side.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
It's nutritionally sufficient. It's a Wardenburger.
Next might take away their butter.
Saved the county a couple of $1,000.
Oh man, they love that cruelty. They love that cruelty.
Man, I tell you, man. But anyways, what we do, folks? Here's the speech. Speech. Damn. We're just gonna forget that voice crack.
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні було багато міжнародної роботи. Наші партнери, президент Чехії в Україні. У нас доволі значна співпраця, зокрема по зброї. Будемо продовжувати чеську ініціативу щодо артилерії, яка нас підтримує. Спільне виробництво. Теж передусім це стосується дронів. Важливо, що Чехія з нами і у політичних питаннях. Говорив з міністром з Британії, він в Україні. Постійно ми на зв'язку з Кіром, прем'єр-міністром, всіма нашими партнерами. Британія – один із найбільших наших друзів. І так буде і надалі. Латвія. Була зустріч зі спікеркою парламента. Усі наші балтійські друзі серед лідерів політичної підтримки України. Дуже дякую. Ми готуємось до наступного тижня, щоб зустрічі в Давосі були продуктивними, були правильними. Потрібен чіткий зміст. Зміст зустрічі і зміст документів. Зараз точно не час для гучних і пустих розмов, для формальних зустрічей. Треба, щоб були результати для реальних людей, для українців, для всіх європейців, для американців. Мир однаково потрібен усім. Справжня безпека потрібна усім. Нормальний економічний розвиток теж потрібен для всіх. І все це має бути відображено в відповідних документах, які ми готуємо, зокрема з американською стороною. Сьогодні я провів нараду з урядовцями та командою Офісу. Зараз на шляху в Сполучені Штати Америки наші представники Рустем Умєров, Кирило Буданов, Давид Арахамія. Зустрічі з американськими колегами ми очікуємо найближчим часом. Прем'єр-міністр України та віце-прем'єр доповідали сьогодні по енергетиці, по надзвичайній ситуації в різних наших містах, громадах через російські удари та жорстку погоду. По всій країні задіяно максимум ресурсів. Буквально десятки тисяч людей зараз працюють в ремонтних бригадах, в комунальних службах, в енергетичних компаніях. І треба, щоб і надалі була така спільна робота на всіх рівнях влади. І між владою та бізнесом, усіх інституцій, усіх служб. Я хочу подякувати всім керівникам громад, які дійсно ефективні, дійсно зі своїми людьми та допомагають. Окремі завдання сьогодні для ППО, для військових. Зараз від розвідки ми маємо інформацію, що росіяни готуються до нових масованих ударів. Ми чесно говоримо з партнерами щодо ракет для ППО, щодо систем, які так необхідні нам. Постачання недостатньо. Стараємось прискорювати. Важливо, щоб партнери нас чули. Багато робиться зараз на рівні Міністерства оборони України, але все одно, будь ласка, звертайте увагу на повітряні тривоги. Будь ласка, допомагайте тим, хто поруч з вами, на самоті, хто потребує вашої підтримки. Міністерство внутрішніх справ розгортає більшу кількість пунктів незламності. Уряд працює з енергокомпаніями і з партнерами, щоб було більше обладнання та більше резервів. Але ключове, щоб світ про це не мовчав. Війни без тиску не завершуються. І саме через те, що тиску замало, росіяни все це роблять. Ми маємо це змінити. Я дякую всім, хто працює заради України. Я дякую всім, хто в бою, на позиціях, на чергуванні, на постах. Україна тримається на вашій ефективності. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. And with that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1423 of the news from around the world. And that was a quite long news segment tonight, folks. That one lasted for 2 hours and 26 minutes. And that means, folks, that we have to get on into the second question segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every one of you all. And we absolutely love this segment, folks, because we can talk about literally anything and everything in this question segment, except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. We can talk about anything and everything in between. And I gotta say that it's going to be an absolute blast, folks. If anything we know, there's always fun stuff to talk about. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping straight back into our super chat questions, our first one here goes to Fred Vreeman, and Fred puts in a very, very generous $100 super chat. We appreciate it very much, Fred, and thank you very much for supporting the channel in a huge way with the biggest super chat of the night. And he said, what do you guys think about using private military to arm and then train the Iran revolutionaries, and maybe lots of U.S. weapons might help the revolution succeed?
Generally, I'm not one entirely for leading an operation with mercenaries because mercenaries don't really fall under direct accountability to the U.S. government. Actually, they don't. That's by design. And for that reason, we don't really have a lot of direct control over the process. We're basically just kind of telling someone, hey, here you go, here's some money, and you go off and kind of do this thing and hopefully do it kind of okay. And the problem with that is that you can get into some questionable territory with that. Like, for example, with Blackwater. Blackwater is a name synonymous at this point with PMCs because while we did hire them to conduct military operations and security in Iraq, they did some very questionable stuff in the process as well. And so, while I would say that private military companies definitely have their role, basically mercenaries have their role in pulling for security behind lines and such things like that, I never think that we should have them as the forefront of operations. If we were to do anything like that, which I think would be a pretty okay idea, I think that we would probably want to have our special forces do something along those lines. Usually special forces are pretty good at doing something like that. Or we could even have that done through a special task force that we create that combines the CIA, the special forces, and maybe other elements of governmental agencies put together to be able to get them in country and also train them. But I don't really like the whole mercenary thing, at least as a forefront or a spearhead of U.S. operations. And that's more so something that I think should be taking up like a rear guard position or something like that for U.S. operations, where they're kind of coming in after our spearhead has been conducted and things have ended up successfully. But I do thank you massively for that humongous support, Fred Freeman. And I would also say that lots of weapons and cash would have helped the revolution to succeed. I wish that we had been really quick in getting that going, because it seems like we may have completely missed the moment at this point. But a large amount of weapons and funding would have definitely helped that revolution to continue to take off and move on farther than how far it made it. So a little bit unfortunate that we didn't see that happen, but I definitely agree with you on that, Fred. And so a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Fred, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to keep the show running and keep it on air for as long as we have. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a huge thanks to you so much once again for that unbelievably massive support. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Secret Vault, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Secret Vault, for that 50. And we do appreciate it very much. He said LSA plus UFO equal happy days and game over. And that is a bit interesting right there. It's surprising. We actually have a pretty good number of like UFO enthusiasts that watch the channel. When I say like a pretty good number, I think it's like, I would say it's probably in the tens or so like that. There's actually a pretty good bit of longtime viewers that are actually into that kind of stuff. So very interesting. I've been asked this a lot over the last couple of days for some reason. Me personally, I am not a believer in UFOs being some type of alien technology or something like that. I'm just a fan in them pretty much being top secret projects that sometimes people unintentionally spot, either being tested or flying around, and then they assume that it's alien, but actually it's just a new aircraft that's probably being tested. So sort of interesting with that. Also, by the way, if you want to see like something that looks like the closest thing to like a quote-unquote UFO that you could imagine right now, if you pull up the Vectis, have you seen that, Enforcer, the Vectis system?
I think I have. I believe. I think.
Pull it up real quick. Pull it up. Let's show the people this real quick, because it's a pretty cool thing. It's a drone. This is like the closest thing we have to like a quote-unquote UFO that's recently come out. This is a new drone that I think Lockheed came up with. That's a pretty cool thing. It's more of like a legacy system. It's very large and expensive, but it is pretty impressive though.
It is pretty cool looking. I will have to say that is actually pretty neat. I mean, look at it right there. I mean, that is pretty cool looking.
It's a wingman, I think.
A wingman? So wait a minute, this thing goes up and goes, "Hey, my friend, he likes you." Like, is it that kind of wingman?
Yeah, it helps you get the ladies. The ladies can't help it when you have a drone like this. That means you have money.
Oh man, that's.
I'm just joking.
Man, that's a
kind of.
Oh, huh? Like, hey, yo, like, but beyond that, I'd have to say that is actually a pretty cool little deal right there. Me personally, I'm also of the belief that any UFOs are most likely government projects that are being tested that haven't been officially stated, because a lot of people identified the F-117 Nighthawk when it was being test flown and hadn't been announced to the public. A lot of people looking at it up at it from the ground thought it was a UFO and would call it in as a UFO, but it turns out it was actually just our first attempt at a stealth bomber. And also, That is something very deceptive about the F-117. It is an F designation, which is usually used for fighters or interceptors, but it's not either of those. It's a bomber. I don't know why they gave it the F designation. I forgot the answer or the story as to why that was done. But this is a bomber and never had any air-to-air capabilities. So very interesting with that. But still, a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and help with this channel to keep on running The Secret Vault, because you allow us to be able to keep that UFO conversation alive. Do they exist? Do they not? And if they do, are they extraterrestrial? Are they government projects? I always go with their government projects, most likely. They're just working on it. They're baking a new cake, and they don't want everyone to know what the cake's going to be made of until they're ready. Because I can tell you all this. When you look at a B-21 Raider, and all of the test flight pictures that have come out, this thing truly does look alien.
It really does look alien. It is such, what is it, the Peregrine Falcon? It is like so close to that silhouette. Like it literally looks like it from the side. It is dead on. Like the designers really took the cue from nature on this one. Honestly, designers on a lot of things, like even on vehicles, they take cues from nature. Like for example, if you've ever looked at the front grille of like sports cars, you'll notice that a good majority of sports cars either have the silhouette of like a leopard, a tiger, or a lion or something with like the way the headlights are actually displayed and the way the grille kind of goes inward. It has a menacing look on purpose because human brains automatically interpret that as being more aggressive, which is good for like sports cars. This though is aerodynamically perfect because of that Falcon design on the side.
It's beautiful. Like it really is.
Look at it. It's so beautiful.
It's just a really cool bomber. I really like these. Actually, what's kind of sad about it though, folks, is that this thing is actually far smaller than a B-2 Spirit. It's not going to replace the B-2 Spirits. It's just going to be a more numerous mini version of the B-2. Let me see. There was actually a picture up here, folks. Here you go. That's actually the size difference between a B-21 Raider on the right and a B-2 Spirit on the left. If you cut them down the middle and put them side to side, that's how big they are compared to each other.
That's impressive right there. I just like the way they shrunk all of it down and made it so small into a flying wing.
Really is something there. It really is something. I just got to say, though, I'm a big fan of this one. This one's cool. I mean, cool as hell looking.
I like that new light gray paint job. That's a little bit nicer looking than that darker gray.
Man, I'll have to say, this light gray paint job really does give that, like, alien sound sort of a theme to this thing. Honestly, it does look more alien because it's a light gray, more so than, like, a solid black or anything like that.
I bet it's really hard to spot in the sky because of that lighter gray color right there. It's probably really hard to spot with the naked eye if it's at altitude.
Man, you know what's even crazier is that this B-2 Spirit's, like, 40 years old in service life at this point.
That's still hard to believe. That was way ahead of its time. Also, the SR-71 was way ahead of its time too, like in aircraft design, which makes you wonder if we were able to do that so long ago, like back in the 70s and stuff like that. Then you know, how do we not do like crazier stuff today that we haven't heard about?
I wonder. That's a good question. That's a good question. You know something? You got a point there. You got a point. You got ideas, kid. You got ideas. I mean, I guess we kind of did do something even more advanced than this because we did make the F-22. And when you look at that, I mean, that is pretty impressive right there.
That's impressive, but it's not like, I mean, it's like a typical fighter jet silhouette going on. It's like it's still reminiscent of a typical fighter jet silhouette. It's different, obviously, in some key reasons, but it's not like the flying wing was like a concept that was just foreign, like it was completely foreign, and still kind of is to a degree. But this is just like normal fighter jet stuff. Although it is extremely capable, but it's still normal fighter jet stuff.
This isn't normal. This thing was a huge step. Oh wow, that's without paint. That's just primer and stuff. That actually is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Actually, I kind of like that. That is actually kind of neat. It's like a mint chocolate chip flavored F-22.
It kind of looks bad.
I mean, kind of. I mean, like a little. But it is.
That's what we're gonna look like if we spending the way we do in this country. All of our stuff's gonna look like stripped copper, just like that.
Man, next thing you know, the president's probably gonna let people dip into their 401ks to put a down deposit on a house because no one can find the money to do it otherwise. I'm sure that's coming around. Wait,
man,
why are you laughing?
We're gonna be bringing our F-22s to Mako to get a repaint before long with that with that paint.
Man, honestly, man, why are you laughing at what I just said though? Did that like happen today or something?
Oh, what happened?
Like, you know, the president trying to look into having people dip into their 401ks to be able to even afford a down deposit onto a house. Did that happen today or something like that? Is that why you were laughing at that?
Oh no, that hadn't happened.
Oh, well, actually, they did.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
I didn't hear about that.
that's why I was making the joke. It actually did happen the day that was announced. You know, and then by the way, folks, on another great news network, just to give you all an idea how great the economy is doing right now, the government said on Fox, a government official did a statement that, you know, look, an adult can survive on a piece of chicken and a piece of broccoli every day for about $3 a meal. And I'm like, damn, I'm like, you know, the economy isn't really doing that great. I don't really think this is a winning economy where you're having to tell people to have a piece of chicken and one piece of broccoli. Like, do y'all know how
Oh yeah, I
caloric
heard that. I heard that comment right there. That's one of those like let them eat cake and then they'll like it or something comments. That's a terrible thing to say.
Oh yeah, and they were doing that before Christmas too. They're like, look, you don't have to get gifts for everyone in your family. You just have to get like very little gifts, maybe one present or two for your kids, and maybe one for your like spouse, and that's it. That's fine. It's like,
Could you imagine? Could you imagine being so out of touch? Just say have a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, or something like that for your daily food. Like, do you know how many calories that is? Like a piece of chicken has basically hardly any calories in it. It's like 300 or 400 calories, like for a piece of chicken. A piece of broccoli, that's like 5 calories, if that. And some water, that's no calories. So people are supposed to sustain themselves off of like
on a
400 calories a
starving
day.
diet.
It's like, are you crazy?
That's like the diet of an anorexic person right there. It's like you can't, no one can live on that. It's like you would die eventually. And also another thing, man, that's kind of crazy. I don't know if you saw this, but the president was out somewhere yesterday or a couple of days ago. He was speaking to a crowd and he was telling them, you know, like you don't need to buy like, you know, tons of toys for your kids. Like you don't even really need to buy one. And I was like, that's kind of interesting because if I remember correctly, his kid like had like, you know, like a RC little car that he could ride in. It's like a little bit interesting how, you know, everyone in the country is supposed to just get by with basically nothing, but the people who actually run the country live in lavish luxury. Don't you kind of find that a little odd? Like, I'm not saying that like as a political thing. I'm just saying that as how in the world are these people supposed to be preaching to the choir when they've never lived the life that other people live, or pretty much everyone in the country lives? I always find that a little odd, you know, just on the economic level, not speaking about anything else. But
I remember when that cereal CEO made the mistake of doing that. Some cereal CEO out there was like, he was asked a question. I can't remember which one it was, but he was asked a question like, "What should Americans do now that food's getting more expensive or something?" He said, "Well, I mean, just have a bowl of cereal." It's like a bowl of cereal. It's like I'm like also I'm like what the, I'm like people are going to sustain themselves off a bowl of cereal. It's like I'm like let me know how that works. That sounds like a fasting diet or something.
oh, and you know, oh man, I gotta say, folks, like whenever I hear anyone from the government talk about the economy right now, they say two things. It actually, folks, is like a CEO's report to their company. We're having record profits, but unfortunately, we will not be able to give y'all any bonuses or raises due to the company being in hard times. It's basically that sort of a deal. I think that might actually come from the corporate world, considering that the current administration has a lot of familiarity with that. Because they'll say two things. The economy has never been better, but also y'all are going to have to make do with a lot less and just suck it up and deal with it. Those are the two statements that come out these days simultaneously. The economy's never been better, and also you make do with less. I don't really know how people don't see the difference between the two. And also,
I think they are. I think they are working on. Thankfully, though, I think they are working on putting a stop to investment banks buying up single-family homes, which is something they should have done a long time
Yeah.
ago. So I don't know if that's actually in effect or not right now. There's a whole bunch of yapping going on about it, but that's something that should have been happening a long time ago. I don't know how the hell the people let the investment companies go around buying up single-family homes. That's crazy, but at least they're trying to undo it. It sounds like. Hopefully, it actually works.
Also, Ruby said, I knew you all get political. Look, we were making fun of the economy in the last presidency, like in late 2024, we were making fun of the economy. Like this has been an ongoing thing for us for about 2 years now. Like you might be hearing it now and you might be someone who's like a big fan of Trump's now you think it's like a directed hit on him, but this has been going on this show for like 2 years now. Because every day, like a lot of y'all, we have to get out and we have to pay for gas at the pump and buy groceries and live in the economy as everyone else does. And it's just impossible to not notice the rising prices. Like it's been going on since 2024. And we saw it back then. Like it was kind of going on a very little in 2023, but by 2024 it was noticeable. And in 2025 it was very noticeable, and it's not getting any less noticeable in 2026. So, you know, like just being straight up, this has been going on for a while here on the channel. We had people on the channel bashing us in 2024 saying that we were hating on Biden because we were saying that inflation was starting to get out of hand and things were getting more and more expensive with each passing week. So this is nothing new. Like, we've dealt with this on multiple ends. But anyways,
I'll be curious to see, like, for the folks in the live chat, if anybody feels comfortable sharing something like this, what is most people's daily like budget for food? Because I've gotten mine down to like $12 a day. That's generally what I can do, like at the lower end for like food for the entire day. That's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. About 12 bucks. That's doing it on the budgeted side. But I'm curious though, if anybody else, like, what theirs is. Like, is that considered normal? Is that considered high, low, or whatever it is? I don't always get to ask people that question because obviously you don't go around just saying, "Hey, what do you spend on food every day?" It's not a normal question to ask. But I'd be curious to see what people say in the chat.
also, Boba Fett said, I'm under the assumption that you bros were rich due to your channel consumption. No, not really. Like, we count pennies. Like we make a good living running a YouTube channel, but we are not, like multi-millionaires, billionaires, and that sort of thing, like other people are who run YouTube channels, because we monetize our show of hardly at all, like compared to other people who do this. So we make a very average sort of an income off of this for the larger part. So we have to count the pennies and we have to count the dollars, and so it is very noticeable, especially when we go to, say, like Costco, like last time. And Matthew can tell y'all, my cart had enough items in it that you could pretty much count it on both of your hands, somewhere around there. Came out to be $107.87. And we were like, how in the world is this little bit of stuff? It's hardly anything. How is it $107? Like it blew us away. And then I think Matthew got just a little bit more, and it was like 120 or something like that. But for the amount of food that we were getting off of that cost, it was basically nothing. Like, maybe enough for several days, but not enough for even a week. And I was like, damn. I was like, this is tough. I was like, this is getting really tough these days. And like, you can tell it's really tough when nobody even looks at the meat anymore and picks it up. They just peruse it like it's a car lot. Like, people are looking at the meat like wow, it's at $9 a pound. Wow, that's something. It's like,
Well, people are calling me a BS, like on the $12 a day thing. And like somebody right here saying that is total BS. I'm actually doing it. I'll tell you how I'm doing it. I'll prove it. I'm getting those. And also, by the way, I shop almost entirely at Costco because I find it to be cheaper to buy it in bulk. So I get the box of, those like breakfast sandwiches that Costco has, like the bacon, egg, and all that stuff. There's like 8 of them in a box, and it comes out to, I think, about like $2 a sandwich. So I eat one of those for breakfast, and I have a little water with it. So that's my breakfast, and I'll usually have like a banana with it, which is like, I think, like 20 cents or something like that. So then for lunch, I usually skip lunch, to be honest, because I don't really like feel the need to eat it. So then when I come around to supper time, I usually have one of those Costco pre-prepared meals, like for example, the chicken pot pie, which costs about 20 bucks, and it lasts me about 3 days for supper. So you can do the math on that right there. It's less than $10 for the supper, and it's a pretty big portion too. So it works out. So that's actually a little bit under $12 a day. Actually, that's my food for the day. So it actually does work. I just proved it right there. So I'm not bull crapping about that. You can make it work. It's obviously not eating luxuriously, but you can make it work.
I eat 2 meals a day. Like, I do not eat 3. I eat 2. I had to cut one of them out. I would love to eat 3 meals a day, but that also probably wouldn't be good for my weight. I would gain weight a good bit. So I eat 2 meals a day. And on average, I can get kind of close to what Matthew does, but it's a little bit more. It's more like $14 a day. But I generally get the Costco pre-prepared meals because they're very large in the quantity of food that you get. And I bake those, and then I basically eat those for my meals nonstop until they're gone. And usually, like tonight, I had a Costco enchilada. So those enchiladas can last for about 5 meals or so. So that's about 2.5 days worth of meals at a cost of about $16 for that enchilada. So break down the math on that, and that's about as low as I can get the cost down on a day-to-day basis.
Also, by the way, Quantum Fighter said, I believe you, Matt, you're a cheapskate. Honestly, I am a cheapskate. I'm not going to make any bones about that. I am a cheapskate. I really do not like spending money because I'm trying to think ahead. Unlike, there's billionaires out there that will say, no need to save for retirement because it won't be necessary. I don't fall for that junk. I'm like, there maybe people out there believe clowns like that about not saving for retirement. I'm trying to save for retirement. So I'm not trying to blow money at at 25 years old. And also when I come around to retirement, then be dead broke. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not taking the billionaire's word for it because I'm not trusting them on that whatsoever. So that's what I'm thinking about. I live well below my means, to say the least, because I'm trying to save for retirement. So that's what I do. And I think a lot of young people in our position, unfortunately, there are young people that are definitely not in our position, which is unfortunate because it shouldn't be that difficult for young people to get a start. But it's better to save than to just go crazy like spending money like young people like to do. Young people do like to spend money, not all of them. It's also not the reason why the economy is suffering, by the way. But having good budgeting, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Budgeting is an incredibly important thing, and I highly recommend that everyone does that because it helps you to be able to save for retirement, which is necessary. I will tell you something why people go, you don't need to save for retirement. I'll tell you why those people up there at the top say that, because they're not in that position, for one, because they'll never be broke. And then secondly, they say it because right now the economy isn't doing too well. And because of that, there's a lot of companies that are not really showing the kind of returns or profit margins that they've been having in prior quarters because of that. So they're telling people to not save up for retirement, so that way some people who will be suckers enough will believe that, and they'll start to go and pour out their money right now into the open economy and start to buy and consume. And when people consume, a lot of companies start to show a higher increase in profit margins. And that means that it looks on their quarterly report like things are looking up, which then means that their stock values go up and they're able to make sure that they benefit their shareholders and keep them happy, and they keep themselves making profits, and so on and so forth, but at your expense. Because if you're a sucker enough to believe what they're telling you, you've poured your money out to make sure they're going to have a good quarterly report this next time, and they're going to be able to keep making money along with their shareholders. But then when it comes around to your retirement time, you're going to be left up the creek without a paddle, with no money, and you're going to have to work until you die because you never saved up anything to even sit back and take it easy in your golden years at the end of your life.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand the people. Like for younger people that do come across, like for the young people out there that rarely do get good jobs these days, because the job market's horrific now. It's hard to get a decent job anymore, especially as a young person, because you have to have like 5 years of experience as you're just starting. And it's impossible to go into a career with 5 years of experience because you're literally just getting started. So for the young people out there that do have a decent job, they all want to go like buy like a super nice car or something like that and get into crazy debt. It's like you're just absolutely eliminating any type of financial security you could have. Like, to have financial security where you're not worried about like next month's paycheck is huge. Like, to me, that is way more important than having a nice car, like in my opinion. To have the peace of mind to know that you're not one step away from going under. That's huge to me. It seems like not many people think that way, that I've seen.
Yeah, because like as far as we work it, like we budget out, like if like and this is like an extreme thing, but we're like, if for some reason our YouTube channel just poof and disappeared, how many months would we be able to survive and try and find a job or something like that? Like that's like we get down to that, so you can tell that there's like some pretty heavy pensions of pennies going on. But outside of that, I hope that does address that the best that we can. Big thanks to you though for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat here goes to none other than, it's going to be Doha5961, and thank you very much, Doha, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And they did not leave a comment, though, but we do appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And we thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Doha. Your name is the name of the capital of Qatar, Doha. I wonder what Doha looks like, because we always hear, Matthew, about that Dubai and that Abu Dhabi, but I've never looked at Doha up in Qatar. What does it look like, I wonder?
What does it look? It looks expensive, I'd imagine. Qatar's got a lot of money.
Huh.
Look at that. Now that's nice right there. They have Lamborghinis for police cars. They also have a new vehicle, I think, that they've rolled out. I think it's Qatar that has it. It's called the Goliath or something like that. I'm not sure what it's called. It's like a police vehicle with like a bunch of cameras on it and stuff. I can't remember the exact name. It's not Goliath. It's something else, though, starting with a G.
I'm not going to lie. This isn't as nice as I thought it was going to be, actually.
Well, you're probably just on the wrong side of town. And when I say the wrong side of town, this is still nice, but I mean, it's just not like the Gucci side of town.
I just expected it to look, Dubai-like, like that's what I expected here. I mean, we're very close to like all of the public parks out here. Let's see what this looks like. Actually, I wonder what that looks like. Dang. Any?
What about the Burj?
The bird that they ain't here. That over in Dubai. Oh, look, here's some pictures of Doha. Look at that.
See, that's nice right there, the way that looks.
I don't know where the hell. Oh, look at these. Wow, look at that. Very high end.
It's like a Chinese junk.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was like, wow, look at that in front of these skyscrapers. I was like, wow. But very interesting. Oh, look. It's the tracks.
Ah, they have a nicer version, I think.
I don't know if that's nicer. Like that thing has a hump on it. I don't trust that. Like overhead wire is a requirement, at least in my opinion. But very interesting though. What is this building?
That's now see if that building survived like a nuclear war or something like that, I guarantee you the new generation of humans would look back on this and say it was designed to capture a capsule shaped UFO from the sky.
Was it a shrine to worship the gods, or was it a UFO capturing machine meant to communicate with those of another kind?
Was it a tuning fork for the elite? Was it somehow a spaceport for those UFO craft? Watch this 30-minute commercial break to find out.
And then you come back, well, is it? We'll never know. Like, it's like, you just wasted my time. But let's see. Wait, what do they have here is like, they have a fire station museum. That's kind of rich. Let's see here. They have this person who's crying.
Bro, is that Mickey Mouse or is that a clown?
I don't even know. What is this? Oh no, Qatar's into modern art. Oh no.
That's what you do when you have money. That's what you do.
Oh my lord. This statue for some reason is like a big deal to all the folks around here. This is not a fire station museum. This is an art museum. And they're calling it. Is that the Cookie
What is up
Monster?
with the that's that same thing that was sitting outside, depressed looking. Why is it holding the Cookie Monster? And also, why is it dead?
Yo, I'm dead. I'm so weak.
Man, it's literally got X's in its eyes. Isn't that like the cartoon like symbolism for being dead?
I think so. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. This museum is garbage. Like, I'm just gonna be kind of honest with that one. But let's see here. How about the National Museum of Qatar? What type of building is this?
That's actually kind of cool. I like that.
I don't know. Oh, look. The creature.
That's the most jankiest looking fossil I've ever seen. Well, that's like the Temu fossil.
Man, this looks like the one that in the cartoons they would have whipped out like the xylophone, like drumsticks, and they would start hitting the ribs, and it would make music or something like.
Man, they got the discount one.
Bro, this is the back rooms. This museum is the back rooms, dude. This is not a real place.
This is cool right here. If I could put my desk like right in the middle of this expanse right here and like have it facing out the window, I would be in perfect heaven.
Also, we always speak of and know of the wildlife of a desert island in the Arabian Peninsula. There's clearly much of it. We can also see what appears to be some sort of traditional garb and dress of the Qatari people. And then sharks that they got suspended by a wire, piano wire that is, off the roof. Then these swords. That's actually pretty cool. That's really cool, actually. And then they got these rays and these animals. That's honestly kind of a little weird and macabre looking, though. But let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, we got these. I'm not going to lie, y'all. I'm not really. Oh, this is a cool room, though. This is like traditional. I like that. That's pretty neat.
Do they have a picture of the Lamborghinis, police cars they got on the street? Like, do they have those in Qatar, or am I thinking about Dubai?
I think that's Dubai.
See if Qatar's got it. What's a Qatar police car look like?
Let's see. Qatari police.
What their law enforcement is driving, that really means something. Like, if they're driving around in Lamborghinis, you know they got some money.
They whipping up with those Arabian horses.
That's just the mounted police, though. Like, what about the motorized ones?
Man, he's wanting the motorized, bro. It's like the motorized infantry. I want them motorized. Let's see. Let me go to the images here. Let's see. Honestly, man, it doesn't really look like
police car. Say Qatar police car.
Well, here's one of them.
Yeah, that might be all they've got. But let's see if they got anything special though. They have like a Lamborghini or something like that.
No, they run a pretty.
Oh wow! Oh no, they got the Urus. They got the Urus. They got one. Like, click on it real quick. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
although
just
this is like.
That's
what?
just for the World Cup, though. That wasn't like their normal police.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they're not balling like Dubai, but they do have some money though.
They got this Audi Q class, like they've got that. I mean, this isn't really like balling like Dubai ball and like UAE sort of a deal. Well, I mean, they apparently had a Lamborghini at some point, but I don't know if that was.
It was special because they put it in the museum.
So
Let's see Dubai's police cars. I want to see those. Like I'm just dying to see them. Like that's what I'm trying to see. Dubai police car. I want to see the. There we go. That's the ones I'm thinking. Oh, they got the Bugatti Veyron for the police car. They are really going crazy. Oh man. Oh, look at this. They got. What's that Lamborghini? Oh, they got the Rolls Royce police car. That doesn't hit right. I don't know about that. That's not doing it. That's not a pursuit vehicle. Go back to the Lamborghini, like big picture, real quick.
Bro, before we move on to that one, this one gives off the vibe. You spoken poorly against His Majesty's government. Like it gives off that sort of a feeling. Oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, that's it. And it was an Aventador too. They had like the nice Lamborghini for this. This is the V12. This is a nice one here. I bet you nobody was running. Honestly, I'd love to get pulled over by this thing. I wish it would pull me over.
I don't know about that. Like I don't know. I think I'd
Please also arrest me. Arrest me.
Go ahead, officer. Go ahead and arrest me. Search my life, man. Oh man. Oh, dude, this is an old one that they used to have. I think they've really upgraded from humble beginnings.
Is that an Oldsmobile?
I think it is, yeah.
What the hell? I didn't know they had those. Like, I'm not sure if that is an Oldsmobile. I don't know about that coupe line in the back. I'm not sure if that looks right.
I don't know either, but let's get back
Where's that Gaiath or something like that? They have a police car in Dubai. It's like a special new one. It's like a SUV looking thing called the Gaiath or something like that. Sounds Klingon, but do they have a picture of that hanging around?
Oh, here we go. I think I found it. This thing.
Let's see. Yeah, that's it right there. That's a new thing. Gyath or something like that, I guess. This is like their new police vehicle. It's got like AI cameras in it. It's got the ANPR stuff like built into it, spotlights and stuff. This thing's actually pretty impressive, although it seems a little authoritarian. But it is impressive from like an intel perspective.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I got to be straight up though. Doha, at least on the street view, where in the world is that cool downtown area that they keep showing? Oh, it's over here. Let's drop down in that and see what this is looking like. I'm not going to lie. For some reason, it feels like Miami in here, you know?
It kind of does feel like Miami, but it feels a little bit more like cleaner.
I don't know, man. I mean, like, this kind of looks like it's, like, a little bit... Like, it doesn't really look well kept, actually, but let's see here. Let's move on. What's the Museum of Illusions?
The whole country.
The
whole country. They're keeping up with the Joneses. The whole thing is an illusion.
Oh, man. Every Middle Eastern country's like that, honestly. Let's go to Riyadh. I wonder what does Riyadh look like, y'all? Like, it's the capital of Saudi Arabia. You basically never hear of this place. Let's drop down in it and take a gander. In the very downtown right here. Now that they've given up on the line, I think, officially. So let's go take a look. What is up with all the cameras on these street views in the Middle East being, like, cannoned off to the side by, like, 20 degrees? But I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. I mean, like, for these countries to be rich with oil, it doesn't really come off that way when you're on the street view, you know? Like, if you look at this, you would think that this is, like, some nice... somewhat nice American downtown. I mean, like, downtown Salt Lake, in my opinion, looks better than this. Just being kind of upfront.
Yeah, I feel like the Dune music's about to start playing. That whole...
Wait, hang on. Let me do it. I got this, man. Used to listen Al Gaib. Yeah, like
yeah, I feel like that music's about to start playing. It's just the architecture though. It's like that sandstone type architecture, that kind of color like that. But I mean, it is a desert though. So I mean, it's just on theme.
You know, Matthew, with that joke that we just made right there, we have been stricken from the list of possible candidates for the Saudi Wealth Fund. Very unfortunate for us. Oh man. But anyways, like, let me go show you all this, folks, because I just compared this to downtown Salt Lake. Let me show y'all downtown Salt Lake. Matthew, where would a good spot... You know what? We'll drop y'all down right here. How about that? This is downtown Salt Lake. This is why I say...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is nice. Like, this is super nice.
It is nice, but I will say like this like really high end part right here is not the whole city, but it is a nice section of the city though. But the rest of the city is still nice. It's just not like that high end.
Let's bring him to the library. Let's bring him. Oh god. Oh shoot, bro. They were renovating it. Damn, there's no homeless people here. This is where the homeless people hang out right here in this little area. But even still on Street View, this looks pretty damn nice. Like even still.
Yeah, it looks nice. I think the city is nice personally. The downtown, it's certainly nicer than Birmingham. At least you can walk the streets and feel safe.
Yeah, let me go show y'all downtown Birmingham, just to show y'all where we're comparing this from, where we have common experiences growing up. Well, we didn't grow up in Birmingham. We kind of grew up more in Montgomery, but I'll show y'all Birmingham anyways in the downtown and kind of show y'all the difference. So, well, I'll drop it down in the most comparable area that I can think of, which would be about here. This is downtown Birmingham. So you see like the boarded up plywood and everything everywhere. Like it's a very different feel than downtown Salt Lake City, and it's also very dangerous down here too. So very different sort of a deal. And this is probably the best part of downtown I can drop y'all in right here. The rest of it's worse. The part in Salt Lake that I dropped y'all in, that's fairly average for the downtown area. At least from what I can see. But there are sketchy places, though. And let me bring y'all across the street because, I don't want to give y'all like rose-tinted vision of the whole place. I do want to give y'all a little bit of a fair look at the deal. Let me put y'all on North Temple, near to this area here, kind of near Red Iguana, by the way, bussin'. But let me drop y'all down here, and maybe this will give y'all a little bit of... So this is like the more rougher side of Salt Lake, but this is comparable to Birmingham's nicer part of downtown, actually. So, it's...
Yeah, it kind of is actually.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, you look at this from Street View from Birmingham to here, and it's like, actually, this isn't that bad. Like, for Alabama, this would be kind of on the higher end, but here in Salt Lake, this is like the worst part of town. This is actually, folks, where that little firefight happened up on 700 North. This is around that area. So, this is like the rougher part of Salt Lake, and even still, it's like the average or better part of Birmingham in downtown. So, a little interesting with that. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much once again for support, Doha, and helping this channel to keep on running. Your name started us off on the whole Doha Qatar thing, and we greatly appreciate you for the support, and also inspiring us to have a really fun and interesting rabbit hole. And we thank you greatly for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Marion, again, for that generous support and also being a longtime channel legend. And Marion said, Slava Ukraine, and Hero Slava, and Hello Enforcers, and LSA.
And Slava Ukrainian, Ram Slava, and a big hello to you, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die, Marion, and so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well, and also I saw someone say, downtown Detroit isn't that bad. A downtown that is exceptionally nice but is never talked about is downtown Chicago. Have you ever seen downtown Chicago, Matthew?
Oh yeah, it's very high end, like I don't know if it's called the financial district or what it's called, but it's really nice in the section near the river.
Yeah, like this is downtown Chicago, folks. It's really crazy how Chicago gets a really, really bad rap. Like, people look at it as like a squalor hellhole, like Detroit. But their downtown is insanely nice. And like, I didn't know that, folks, until I watched a YouTube channel actually go here and make a documentary about a ship that capsized in the forgot the name of this river that's right next to us here on the Street View. But a ship capsized in that river, and hundreds of people drowned to death, literally right next to the boardwalk, or more so the walkways here that we're on. And very interesting documentary. But Chicago is actually a very beautiful place. And from what I've heard from the Chicagoans, they say, and I saw Nico bring that up, the dangerous gangs. Apparently the gangs are like really territorial, like the O-Block folks don't really like wander around bringing chaos to the whole city. They kind of keep it in their place, but it inflates the crime rate of Chicago to be, one of the highest in the country, although the violence is very localized within specific parts of Chicago. So I don't...
Unless you're living in the high-end section, I don't think your Chicago experience is going to be that nice.
I don't know. Honestly, folks, I'm gonna give a stay of execution on the whole Chicago argument. I want to go to Chicago and see it myself one day to actually get an idea of what it's like, because maybe it's not that bad. Like I heard that LA was a hellhole, and depending on where you go in LA, it kind of is, but it's not all a hellhole. So
most of LA is kind of a hellhole, if I'm being honest. The super high end parts aren't, but you can't. Most people can't afford to live in the super high end part.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. But I mean, to visit, it's not bad. Like it's not bad at all. So, maybe like, folks, I was actually thinking about taking a little tour around O Block. I was actually thinking about that myself. And
I
I
don't
think,
think you want to do that.
man, I don't know. Like it's a man. I mean, I'll be straight up. I probably wouldn't. But Chicago downtown, it's not a bad place. I mean, like if you look at the pictures of it, I mean, it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty neat. I would want to take a trip there eventually. I mean, it is basically the capital of the Midwest and the railroad hub of the United States of America. So it would be interesting to go see that one day. Detroit, however, some people are saying that Detroit's downtown has actually improved. Let's drop down and see if that's true, Matthew. Oh, actually, this is nicer than I thought it would be.
It's kind of right.
The Hudson Cafe. What does the outskirts look like, though? Like out here? What does it look like out here? Jeez. North Birmingham.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan. I have a feeling like the downtowns of these places, like Chicago and also Detroit, they look good. But I can tell you, just flying into Detroit, like I did not like that even flying into it.
Detroit had an atmosphere of desolation going on to it. Even coming into the airport, it felt like you were actually entering a depression. Like not an emotional depression, but like a regional and economic depression. You felt like that even in the airport. It's really crazy too because they still have major industries here in Detroit, like the Ford automotive plant and works. And it's crazy that they have that stuff and it's still running. And yet the city is basically shot. Like downtown's all right, but the rest of the city though, most of it is not that well off from what I know. Like example, this. Like look at this. This is urban decay to the extreme. This is basically like what Rome looked like after the collapse in the 300 and 400 AD era. It's crazy looking, to see that. So, very, very different places, Detroit and Chicago. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Blind Man, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Blind Man, for that generous support. He said, the FFX was revealed at SNA 2026. The length is 421 feet, displacement of 4,700 tons, 28 knots, endurance 60 days or 12,000 nautical miles, 148 crew, up to 16 NSM or 48 Hellfire CUAS, 1 times 21 cell RAM launcher, 1 times 57 millimeter, and 1 times 30 millimeter turret. A primary job is escort and maritime interdiction ops.
And thank you for the support, Blind Man. And my problem is that if it's supposed to be an escort, where is its air defense VLS cells for SM3s and SM2s? And it doesn't have any of them built on board. And that is something that a lot of people have been pointing out and criticizing. And I myself have to criticize in the design because in the modern day, VLS cells are incredibly important in modern naval warfare. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well. And I mean, it sounds like a pretty decent ship for its size. And it is fairly punchy, but it just doesn't have VLS cells. And that's where I find fault in the vessel's design. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Secret Vault yet again, who put in another $50 support. And thank you very much, Secret Vault, for that generous support. They said, I have seen UFOs, filmed and researched them, and lectured all over the world. And I was like Fox Mulder. Google my name. I'll see here. I'm not sure if I should read it off, by the way, because, you never know who's listening. There's, sometimes there's some crazy people listening, like in the background. You never know, hot dog man of the gang. But they said aliens are real, so are Men in Black. And I was on TV with Will Smith and Buzz Aldrin.
And thank you for the massive support and sharing that with us. It's very interesting to hear. And we're incredibly appreciative that folks like you help us to keep this channel running and make this thing a possibility. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from 007 The Watcher. And thank you very much for that support as well. And it said, I love the work you guys are doing. And I anticipate each episode in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying our work. And thank you for enjoying what we're doing. And thank you so much for anticipating each episode. We try our best to make that the case. And we massively thank you for enjoying it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have another $50 support from the Secret Vault. And thank you very much to the Secret Vault for that third support, actually, a 50-pound, that is. And they said Area 51, they just aired on TV in reference to Area 51. He said he was driving the same car as this Fox Mulder fellow. And let's see here. I think there might have been a typo in the middle of it right there. Can you make out what that was trying to say?
Campbell had a map of secret sensors we evaded. The camo dudes. Glenn did a map with an RX scanner for devices that detected magnetic pulses when the cars drove by, and they were pissed off, so we got so close.
Man, they getting pissed off. They don't like people near the gate.
They don't like people near the gate, I can tell you that. And I got to thank you massively for support once again and sharing a very interesting story with us and helping us to keep this channel running. Because folks like you make this thing a reality. And so big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Mark, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Mark, as well, for that generous support. He said, thank you for taking an objective and logical approach to analyzing modern geopolitics, and it's very refreshing in this day and age.
And thank you so much for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep them running. And we always try our best. We really and truly do. And I got to thank you massively once again for support. And we're on to the next one.
And moving on to our next one, this one goes to Juke Ever, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Juke, for that $20 support. He said, I hear you talk about trains a lot. Oh, and yes, he does. Do you do model railroad, and what scale? And what's your favorite engine? And mine is Athens Genesis Challenger. It's a beautiful engine to run on my layout.
You know, that's actually very interesting to hear, Juke Ever. And yes, I actually do model railroading. It's not really big. I'm still trying to work on building my first layout. And actually what I was going to do was I was going to make a layout of the AGS South that goes from Birmingham to Meridian, or basically Birmingham to Tuscaloosa was really like the scope. But that was far too ambitious and I could never figure out how to make that work on a track designer online. So now I'm moving on from that into something more Utah based because it's local and I'll be able to get inspiration for prototypical sort of a layout. But I primarily wanted to model the Louisville and Nashville, but it was really hard to find anything for the Louisville and Nashville, at least what I was looking for. So then I dropped that, and then I decided to go for something modern and class 1, so then I tried to do Norfolk Southern. So I have an okay amount of AC-44 C6Ms from scale trains, which I would say are probably my most favorite type because I have a good amount of them. But my favorite engine is actually an EMD GP40. I just think they're cool. Like, I like their design. They're what I think of when I think of like a diesel electric. I think GP40. But I do like the AC-44 C6Ms. I think they're really cool too. That's basically just the Gevo. But I think these are the neatest thing. And right now what I'm doing, or what I'm wanting to do, because this is taking a lot of time to try and get around to at the moment. Oh, yo, in stock. Well, I'll have to take a look at that. Like, I'll have to.
Also, by the way, we got a lot of super chats left. By the way, we have like 35 left.
We do. But I'll answer this really quickly. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to make a model layout of the Salt Lake City branch line that exists through the city and work it based off of the UP, or if I can, Utah Railway. But it's most likely going to be UP with GP40s. So a really cool thing to hear that you're also into model trains. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we are now moving on to our next one, which goes to Slim Tricks, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you for that support, by the way. We do appreciate that. He said, I've viewed a lot of world news from many sources, and this is top tier. And I'm grateful for the commitment to bringing us the truth. And stay blessed.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the incredibly kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a super chat that just came in from Tuan Maru. And thank you very much, Tuan, for that $20 support. He said the boss was talking to an Iranian a couple days ago. Also, by the way, like, I don't know why, but when you said the boss, like, I thought about the mafia for a minute. I was like, the boss. I was like, interesting. But anyway, they said the boss was talking to an Iranian a couple days ago, and it said the death toll was 30,000. But don't think they had accurate stats, and they didn't have current contact with family, and also claimed that the people wanted no religion.
And thank you for the support and sharing that with us. It's an unfortunate number to hear. There's been a lot of numbers floating around at the moment, and we're not really sure which one's even correct anymore. It was a large number, though, no matter what. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would also have to say that as far as no religion, Like, I got to say this up front. Matthew and me are Christians, but as far as governments go, I want religion completely out of the government. I don't want the government getting up in my business telling me how I'm supposed to be a Christian or how I'm not supposed to be a Christian. That's none of their business. I completely believe in the division of church and state that the United States has emphasized as a key doctrine of our government for 250 years, and I think that that should continue to exist well on into the future, because I like look at how twisted the government is and how corrupt and how everything becomes a stupid game, and imagine them turning religion into that, whether you believe in religion or not. I don't like that, and that should never be the case. And I'm sure a lot of Iranian people think that way as well. Even if they're Islamic, I'm sure they don't want the government up in their business about how they are Islamic and how they practice their faith. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also another big shout out to the Secret Vault for putting in a 20-pound support. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He did not leave a comment on that one, but we do appreciate that support very, very much. And we also have a 10 from Live Animal. And Live Animal said, it seems a motivation for Saudi Arabia to oppose military action against Iran. And it could be that they might be irrelevant in the Middle East in the absence of the IRGC.
I would say that they wouldn't be irrelevant because they are still a major oil-producing power, and so they would still be relevant in the Middle East because our entire focus in the Middle East is to make sure that we keep the oil-producing countries within our sphere or friends of us. So they would still be quite important for that reason alone. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see a lot of people in here talking about that separation of church and state. I think the best way to operate a government, and I think this is the way it's generally been for a while until recently, until they started expanding the federal government again, usually giving a government as little power as possible to run the government efficiently and effectively, but no more than that. Like, you should never want the government to grow bigger. Like, that's my general mindset, because when the government says they're here to help, I can't remember which president said that. I think it might have been Reagan, actually. Whenever a government says they're here to help, that's usually a very bad sign. They're not usually helping. They're usually trying to do something to benefit themselves. So if you can keep them with as little power as possible, but just enough to make the thing work, that's the best case scenario, in my opinion. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Big Ron, who puts in a 10. He said, hello, gentlemen, a question for you. If the U.S. is serious about taking Greenland and is having a major fallout with NATO, then why has the U.S. not either been kicked out or removed themselves from NATO?
The U.S. cannot be kicked out. Nobody can be kicked out of NATO. All you can do is leave NATO, and I think the U.S. is trying to do some sort of a distraction thing with Greenland right now, and that's why we haven't done that. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that it was addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from TR, and TR said, thanks for that excellent coverage.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our excellent coverage. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hroman, who puts in a 10. He said, have a box of donuts on me.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Roman. And we will have a box of donuts on you. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we'll have to try and find a good donut shop around here. I haven't had a donut since we moved to Salt Lake, actually. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Naomi Mide, who puts in the 10. They said, if not for the enforcers, where would we get the accurate news? And also thank you for that, by the way. They said, Enforcer Matt also has a degree in political science, no? And yes, I do. Yes, I do. And gentlemen, please keep up the good work, and we need reliable news.
And we will always keep up the great work, thanks to folks like you and everyone else who's watching tonight. And I got to thank you massively for the kind words and supporting this channel, because it helps us to make this thing a reality. It helps us to keep this thing rolling, and it helps us to be one of the few common sense voices that's out there on the internet that doesn't get involved in the political games, but just state stuff for what it is. Whether it aligns with one side or the other, that's up to people's own conjecture. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Naomi Mide, who puts in another 10. And they said, it took more technology to build the SR-71 Blackbird than it did to put a man on the moon and USA. And you know, actually, that is true. The SR-71 took a lot of work. Also, it took a lot of smuggling of titanium out of the Soviet Union, too. So it took a hell of a lot of work, especially on the design side of it. A lot of feats of engineering going into that, especially compared to the moon situation. They only had to get a camera, a cinema camera for that one. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I'm joking, by the way. That's a joke.
No.
I said that kind of deadpan, so someone's going to take it serious.
Buzz Aldrin's going to rock your shit. Bro, he's going to come here, man. He's going to like, bro.
You want me to swear on the Bible about it? Come here, you.
Man, bro, he beat the hell out of that one guy. Oh,
Are you
man.
sure?
I mean, he walloped him, remember?
Allegedly.
Well, no, it was on film, remember?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, man, like, let's see. Let me go. Hold up. Punch. Here we go. Here it is, right here, man. This is the gif of Buzz Aldrin punching that guy in the face. That is Buzz Aldrin right there. So I mean,
That's crazy. I've never seen that before.
yeah, that's not allegedly. This guy came up telling Buzz Aldrin that he was a liar and a faker, and that he faked the moon landing and it wasn't real. And he pissed Buzz Aldrin off enough. He socked him in the jaw. So like, it's like,
Why did he get so offended by it?
yeah, I don't know. Like it just rubbed him the wrong way, and he went off. So like. Huh. Don't get around Buzz Aldrin and tell him that the moon landing was fake. He'll beat your ass. Like, he'll actually beat you. So I was like, that's why I was making that joke. I think you were like, allegedly. I was like, no, man, that's on film. Like, he did that.
I'm making sure. I was making sure because I had never seen that before.
Man, but beyond that, though, let's keep that down to a low roar, Matthew. I don't want Buzz Aldrin rocking our stuff. But beyond that, that is actually true. It's actually crazy how much work technologically it takes to do a lot of what we do every day in the modern world. And it took basically nothing to get people to the moon, at least technologically compared to a lot of stuff that we do today. And so a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to P.I. Addy Diddy. Okay, no Diddy, but they put in a 9. They said, to my favorite AI news reporters, thank you for that, AI. They said, watching from the first city in the world to see the sun.
Have you ever seen ChatGPT? but a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. We're happy to know that we are your favorite AI reporter. And we're not AI, by the way. I have to make that clear. I do have to disclaim that. We are real living people. People who live on this earth with all of y'all, which is kind of scary sometimes because of how it's going these days. But we're still happy to be here and proud to report the news to all of y'all. So a huge thanks to you once again. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $7 support from Green Thumb Washington, and thank you for that 7. They said Greece has recently in the news due to media exposing that their waters have been used allegedly for transference and obfuscation of oil, malevolent, related to 2 deaths.
That's obfuscation. Oh damn! Oh, what's benevolent?
Obfuscation.
Man, that's so hard to say.
Well,
obfuscation. There we go. Obfuscation. Damn, that is hard to say.
I don't ever use that word in real life, like in like normal thing. I have used malevolent before, like in real life, but not malevolent.
You mean benevolent, not malevolent?
No, malevolent. No, I've used malevolent in real life, like to describe what that guy was saying.
What's benevolent, man? But beyond that, that's interesting here. I haven't really heard about that a lot. And technically, several countries within that area could probably have their waters used to transport out Russian oil, but I think that most of that would be through an international water corridor in the Aegean Sea. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Crispy and Garland Harris for each putting in a $5 support, and we appreciate both of you very, very much for that support. And we also have a 5 from I Will Eat Your Hot Dogs, and who put in a 5. They said, "Aw man, I wish I'd get a Nobel Peace Prize. Aw man, but now I feel like jail. Aw man."
I'm going to Yale. Man, what was that guy, man, on that clip from New Orleans? Like they're like, bam, bam, bam. Go, big, go. And then he got in front of the camera and he said, "I'm going to jail." Like, and then he walked off, man.
I'm going to jail tonight.
I've heard that some people up in Minnesota have been sweating heavily, getting restless nights, like they've given to many other people, about the fact that they might end up being incriminated in some form of a possible crime. And I've got to be honest with you. I mean, if it happens, justice is sweet. I'll tell you that. The evil doesn't always triumph in this world. There is always a chance. So we'll have to wait and see. But it sounds as though Hot Dog Man might not be, on the little like spinner thing at the gas station that cooks the hot dogs. He might be getting boiled instead in the boiling water. He's in the hot water now. Oh, but anyway, so that a big thanks to you once again for support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kibbles, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Kibbles, for that support. They said, thank you for the hard work. The professionalism is awesome. And I also appreciate the passion when a topic is personally important to you.
Thank you so much for enjoying our show, and thank you for enjoying our work. And we actually try and keep the passion down, but it's hard sometimes when you're a patriot and you really do want to see the best for everyone in the country, to see an action that's being made that will never be in the interest of anyone. It's just really hard to keep passion down on those sorts of things. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. And Brian said, a bad take on the Machado situation, and people were leaving in charge are still a part of Maduro's, and nothing's changed. Gonzalez was the best choice. But you got to, like, my thing is, like, I get where you're coming from, Brian, why you would think that. But at the same time, though, I'm with the enforcer. When you got to look very closely at people's characteristics, like things like the Nobel Peace Prize situation, that's not as simple as it looks. That reveals something about her personality, which is, in my opinion, not a good trait. You don't want somebody that desperate to take power, because you got to ask yourself the question, why is she so desperate to take power? If she's willing to bend and twist and do whatever she needs to do to get in that position, I mean, to me, that reads a little bit strange to me. She could have good intentions and just really want to, lead the country. I've said that before, but it's not a good indicator. I guess that's the best way to put it. A lot of people ignored other indicators about other leaders, and then they found out a little bit later on down the road, hey, that wasn't actually that good. We should have paid attention to that. But enforcer, what say you?
I didn't say, Brian. One, I think you may have misunderstood me earlier. I'm not saying that Maria Corina Machado is not the leader of Venezuela, as in the other ones like Guterres should remain there as a part of the Maduro regime. Not at all. That's not what I was saying. I actually believe that we shouldn't have Corina Maria Machado, and we also shouldn't have the Maduro regime in charge. It should be that the government is dismantled in Venezuela, and then we build it from the ground up to where the Venezuelan people can hold referendums to see what they want, and then have an actual election that is run unbiased and fairly. I would have to say I have great suspicions that Machado is not involved in this for the benevolence and care of her countrymen. I think she's more so caring about her own personal gain and power that she could possess if she became the quote-unquote temporary leader of an interim government in Venezuela. Because you would have to be blinded by a lust for power to go up to a guy who's already punked you and then give him a medal that you got, that you can't even transfer the name of or anything over, to try and appease the guy so that way he might just say that you can be the leader of Venezuela. You are like, someone who is that blinded by a lust for power is someone who doesn't need that sort of power. And I would say that whoever should be the leader of Venezuela certainly shouldn't be from the Maduro camp that's still in charge of the country right now, but also shouldn't be her either, because for some reason she is so power hungry, it raises considerable suspicion to me. I would have to say that it also kind of falls for Pahlavi as well. It's like, this guy just wants so badly to be the interim government leader for what purpose? It's like, there's got to be some sort of self-gain involved in this here for someone to be this damn adamant at wanting something.
Also, it's like, why is the U.S. acting like they're the arbiter of who's going to become in charge anyway? It's like, yes, the U.S. Attacked Venezuela, but how's that give us a license to pick who's going to run it? It's like, it seems like the Venezuelan people ought to be the ones picking that. At least even the interim leader, they should be picking the interim leader. And it seems like that should be the case. Or at least if they wanted to simply put someone temporarily in charge, they can. But I don't know how the U.S. is becoming like the new decider of who's going to be in charge of every country. Because, I mean, we're currently looking at putting someone in charge of Iran. We're looking at putting someone in charge of Greenland. We're looking at putting somebody in charge of Venezuela. And perhaps even further than that, it could be Cuba, Colombia, Mexico. I mean, it could be everywhere.
Folks, it's a tough question. It's always hard to answer, but I think I have the answer, Matthew. Marco Rubio. Like, we just put him in charge of all of them. I'm sure that'll work out fine. He could be the Shah of Persia, the president of Venezuela, the governor of Minnesota. What other titles does he hold at the moment? The manager of the Hiltons, something like that.
I think he just got listed on the Gaza peace plan team or something too. Like some proposal or something they came out with for the Gaza initiative. I think he got listed on that.
Yeah, well, he's now the governor of Gaza. Let's see here. He could be let's see. let's see, the Emperor of India. I mean, like Marco Rubio, he's a very versatile kind of a guy. You can put him in any position, and he just, he kind of just blends in, like he was kind of like sinking into that couch during that one meeting that they took their picture of him on. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. But in all honesty, I would agree with Matthew. We should give the atmosphere to where the people in those countries actually get to decide what they want. And while, of course, it will have to end up being American aligned at the end of the day, it ought to be American aligned in the flavor of their choosing, however they would want that to be, with the leader that they want, with the government that they want, with it being managed the way that they would like it. I think that's the way we should run it. Well, not run it. I think that's the way we should allow everyone to be able to run it, instead of acting like we are the people who gets to decide who rules their own people and their own country, which makes no sense. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Moby Duck. And thank you very much, Moby Duck, for that support. And he put in a 20 and said, posted this last night, but it seems like there's a non-zero chance that Israel did an underground nuke test the other night that causes the fighter scramble. An earthquake equaled a low-yield test, and they had an earthquake drill too.
And I thank you for the support, Moby, but I have not heard of an earthquake that has happened in the area that would be somewhat large enough. Usually it'd have to be like a 5.0 or so, and also conducting an underground test where? Because if it's in Israel, that would not be done, because that would destabilize a great deal of the ground around the area and cause a significant risk to public safety. So I would doubt that a nuclear test was conducted, but I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 50 Australian from none other than Darren Quinn. And thank you very much, Darren, all the way from Australia, for that support. He said, from the South Australian scrub turkey, a beekeeper, I knew you'd scrolled across the Kerch Bridge. I just knew it.
And I thank you so much for the support, Darren Quinn. And I gotta say, it was eventually coming around that the Kerch Bridge was going to be unusable, and that day was today. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Chef Danny B, who put in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that support. Once again, we do appreciate that. And also, by the way, I hope that situation got resolved, by the way, that you were telling me about. And Danny said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny. And sorry I haven't been too chatty, but I'm still here in the background. And I hope everything is well with y'all and the LSA.
And I gotta say, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I hope that things have been going well for you in the background. And that's perfectly okay not to be chatty, because a lot of people always have a whole bunch of things going on in their very own lives. And I completely understand that folks get busy, like yourself, because you're the official chef of the LSA. You were always busy cooking up delicious meals for hundreds, if not thousands of people. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, real quick, I know we're running overtime, but I saw Rick in the live chat said, your dialogue is getting a bit strange, my friends. I do not believe we should be a global police force, but we do need some places with some U.S. guidance. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have U.S. guidance. In fact, like, for example, I am pro supporting Ukraine, so I'm definitely not a person that's an isolationist or something like that. Also, I'm definitely in support of helping the protesters, since it looks like the Iranian government's going to pretty much overrun them at this point. I am in support of, airstrikes or whatever is necessary to make sure the protesters are successful. So I believe in U.S. guidance, but don't mix that up, though, with, like, for example, trying to pick the leaders. Like, we can't go around installing people. That never works. I mean, it would be nice if we could from a purely selfish perspective, because it makes it real easy to control places, but we just can't do that. It doesn't work. It creates hatred and animosity amongst the populace, because imagine if that was your country. Imagine if you are an Iranian and you weren't too fond of the United States, and then you saw the U.S. picking your new puppet leader, you would be pissed off. And that animosity is going to build up over time, and eventually you're going to come around to that person probably getting ousted from the government inside of Iran, whoever was installed by the United States. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
And I would have to say that that is quite a good point to make right there, an incredibly important one. And also, I would say, for one, we do have to be a global police force, because that's the only way we maintain the sphere of influence that makes our country what it is, because our nation is nothing without the sphere of influence that we have. You can see that in the example of Russia. Russia has no sphere of influence, and they were a backwater, dying country, and have been for decades. So we have to have a sphere of influence, and therefore we have to be world police. But also, some countries do need U.S. guidance, but we have to understand that there has to be some nuance on our guidance. We can't be all in to the point that we're literally micromanaging everything in another country, because let's say that happened here in the U.S. Like, let's say some country from overseas, like China, picked our leaders for us. So you didn't get an option in the last election between Biden or Trump or Kamala and Trump. China just came in and said, you know what? It's going to be this random guy. It's going to be Jeff Hill. That's your guy. Would you like that? Like, no, you would hate it. You would absolutely despise that. And these people are going to despise that. You would hate the Chinese if they did that in America. I would too. And those people in Iran and Venezuela, they are going to hate us if we don't even allow them to pick their own government. And they basically replace one dictatorship that was a beast for an American dictatorship that is also a beast on the people. We have to let them decide, because that's the only way that they end up being happy with this whole thing. And that's the only way we end up seeing that a government comes into power in that country that is aligned with the United States, that the people are also happy with. Otherwise, it won't end up well for us. And there's plenty of historical examples to show that that will certainly be the case if we pick one for them. But a huge thanks to you once again for voicing your opinion. Very interesting one, but that's generally my opinion on it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Atreyu, who puts in a 10. And they said, honest question, is it normal to have a stratotanker in Iran from the U.S. like the one is right now on flight radar?
Oh, the flight radar has probably had an artifact because they predictive path the aircraft. There's not a stratotanker in Iran. It would be most likely engaged by the Iranians or shot down. So it's just predictive flight pathing. But I do thank you so much for the support. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Moby Duck once again, and thank you very much, Moby Duck, for that support. They said a shallow 4.2 magnitude quake in Israel's Negev desert near Dimona has sparked chatter about a nuclear test. Dimona is where Israel's nuclear facility is located, and the tremors came even as the U.S. threatened Iran with strikes. But I think the big problem with that, in my opinion, is that Israel has no reason to use nuclear weapons right now. They have no reason to do that, and also they wouldn't want to test a nuclear weapon during a time like this when there's already about to be an attack about to take place. I don't think that would be good for the timing purposes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they probably wouldn't test a nuclear weapon because they already tested one back in the 70s and proved that their equations did work for the form of nuclear warhead that they had. So there would be no reason for them to do a second one. And if they did that, they would then be proven to the entire world and creating a brand new foreign policy crisis that would distract from Iran that Israel is officially a nuclear-armed state and then has to be responded to accordingly. So I don't think the Israelis would want to do that because it would break the lie that they basically pushed for decades now that they're a non-nuclear power, although they are. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for supporting and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, we have a $20 support from Arar983. And thank you very much, Arar, for that support. He said, Swig and Donut Fun and LSA. And he knows about the swig. He knows about that right there. That's something. I like that. I don't have it often, though, because I'm not a huge person that's big on sugar like that. And those are full of sugar, it seems like. I'm not sure how much it has, but it must have a lot in it. Swig and Donut Fun, that sounds like diabetes. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'll take that diabetes. I'll take it. And I got to thank you so much for support for the Krispy Kreme and Swig Fund. I absolutely love Swig. Swig is good. And Krispy Kreme is not too bad either. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Ryan H. on Wheels. And he said, hello, Enforcers. Take a look at the Swedish nuclear weapons program. I recently watched a documentary on it, and I was surprised to see how far they got without anyone really noticing an LSA.
You know, it actually is kind of interesting because they actually had this running from 1945 all the way up until 1972. So this thing was running all the way up until like the latter phase of the Cold War, which is pretty crazy. This is actually one of the research buildings that this was conducted in right here.
Look at that. That's a building and a half.
Yeah, apparently it's now a school. So that's kind of neat. But let's see here. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to give a deep rabbit hole in this because we are starting to run out of time and we still do have a good amount of questions to go. But it's a really interesting sort of a rabbit hole. It's also an even crazier rabbit hole to know that there is one country that was nuclear armed on the planet and completely denuclearized and is now a non-nuclear power. Matthew, name the country.
Ukraine.
South Africa.
Huh? Well, what about Ukraine?
Ukraine inherited nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union, so that was kind of like a different thing. Like, they didn't create their own nuclear weapons program, test a nuclear weapon, field a nuclear weapon, and then get rid of it all internally. South Africa is the only country on the planet that actually started a nuclear program, successfully tested and fielded nuclear weapons, and then completely dismantled their nuclear weaponry, and then became a non-nuclear power all internally.
I think Ukraine would still count.
I don't think so, because if they count, that means Belarus also counts.
But wait a minute, Belarus has nukes.
Belarus did have nukes. They were in the same situation as Ukraine. There were several hundred nuclear weapons based in Belarus that were a part of the Soviet arsenal, and then they had to also relinquish those back to the Russian Federation.
But did they ever come to a treaty to denuclearize, or they just handed them back over?
Let's see here. Belarus. Let's see. Belarus nukes. Let's see here. Nukes 1990s. Let me go get this really quickly. Yeah, so as a result of a memorandum and other agreements between 1993 and 1996, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons. So actually, it wouldn't just be Belarus, it would also be Kazakhstan as well, who were a part of different memorandums to give back their nukes to the Russians.
Oh, wow. I guess so then. I guess you're right.
Yeah, it's a crazy fact about the South Africans, that is. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once give us support and help this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Travy Trav, who puts in the 5. And they said it could happen. They said Damascus gets destroyed.
I don't think they're getting destroyed anytime soon. I don't know about that, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we'll have to see one day. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 Canadian from Sean, and he said, hey guys, and if Canada was involved in a war, would they first want to take out Edmonton, Alberta, as Edmonton has tons of oil reserves along with northern Alberta, and I'm loving the channel.
I would say that if Canada was involved in a war, most countries would probably focus on their eastern part, in between the area of the Ontario Peninsula as well as the area of Quebec, because that's where most of the population lives. And if you occupy most of the population centers, you basically win the war at that point, because effective resistance will be minimal or non-existent from then on. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Sling, who said for some chicken and broccoli in LSA.
A piece of chicken and a piece of broccoli. And a big thanks to you for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never starve. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one, also real quick, I know we're running late, but Moby Duck made one more point about the alleged nuclear test that Israel allegedly conducted. They said, I agree with you guys, but for devil's advocate, if Netanyahu thought Iran was going to pre-strike the other night, they could test one underground and scare Iran. That would be super reckless of Netanyahu to do that, by the way. If that was something that was actually happening, that is highly reckless, because nothing that's currently happening warrants nuclear weapons usage. It just simply doesn't. The U.S. has not abandoned Israel. So if something happened, the U.S. would obviously come to their aid and help defend their country. So to start, threatening nukes over something that's not warranting that would be really reckless, at least in my opinion.
And I would have to agree. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Naomi Mide, once again, who puts in the 5. They said, look for the crock pot breakfast burritos recipe, cheap and easy to make and freeze for lunch. And LSA, listen to your LSA mother.
And thank you so much for supporting Naomi, and we thank you greatly for sharing that incredible advice with us. And we might actually try and follow through on that. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, we have a 5 from Secret Vault once again. He said, I'm computer security for a TV star. And I can't read the last part there, but that's what they said.
And thank you so much for the support, Secret Vault, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Forgetful Fox, who said Enforcers should release a Christmas album.
The weather outside is frightful. Maybe one day. But a huge thanks to you so much for giving support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Destroyer, who said, just a quick update. Argentina paid back their loan with interest. I guess Malai doesn't understand that countries never pay their debts.
When did that happen?
I'm not sure when that happened. Personally, I'm not sure when that happened. Also, technically, it wasn't really a loan, I don't think.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, but I do thank you for the support, Destroyer, and we'll research that and look into that. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that it's addressed that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Boomer, who puts in a 3, and Plazoth, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much to the both of you for that support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said, one law that all must obey is physics, or quack.
And I thank you so much for support, Bruce Lee, and sharing that info with us. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Ruben Shkuli, who said, is the Iran using civil aircraft as cover?
Not that we know. They actually declared a NOTAM when they thought they were about to get hit, so they were even trying to clear out the airspace for military operations. So a huge thanks to you once again for support. I hope that addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Newfoundland Imperials who said allegedly Vitaly Zidorovsky got deported to Russia. Now that is something there. If you're referring to that YouTuber fellow who I believe is currently in a Philippines facility, I think he's being held there for like 9 months or something like that. I don't even know what he did to get held in there for 9 months, but I had heard some allegations that he might get deported to Russia, which I think would be horrific because I think he might get sent to the front lines if he gets deported back to Russia like that. I'm hoping that's not the case. I don't know much about the guy, to be honest. I just know he's a YouTuber, but that would be very bad if they deport him to Russia and then all of a sudden he got sent to the front. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I mean, he's not looking too well. I mean, he's looking kind of rough these days. Not really as swole as he once was.
That's the initial picture, man. That's the new one's right down there with the full beard down there. Look, go down. There you go. Like, that's him. But that guy's been through something in there.
He's not like that anymore. He's a broken man. He's been in
Man. Oh man, I don't know what's happening there, but goodness.
Where is he nationally? Like what country was he being held in before he was deported?
I think it's the Philippines.
That's no place you want to be in prison. Like, I can tell you all that those prisons are rough in the Philippines. But still, very interesting with that. And it looks like he might be getting into the Russian army here soon. That wouldn't be good for him. And I got to say, that's the number one reason why, folks, as an influencer, just a word to the wise for all the influencers who might watch this show, it's never smart to travel out of the United States of America and then conduct the social media shenanigans that y'all are famous for, because other countries don't look at that too well. Like Johnny Somali up in South Korea, who got his ass beat, and I think he's also in prison as well. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Honestly, man, that is going to be insane if he gets into the front lines.
Oh my lord!
Oh my god! Can you? Also, by the way, I'm not wishing that on the guy. I don't wish that on anybody. Like, I don't really wish that on a soul. That's horrible. But I mean, damn, going from a YouTuber to being in a Philippine prison and then going to the front lines in Ukraine. I mean, that's a bad break of luck,
bruh. That's what they call bad breaks. Like, that's
god, that's bad.
I mean, but the number one moral of the story, folks, is don't do YouTube shenanigans in foreign countries, and you won't end up as a conscript in the Russian army in Ukraine. Like that's the weirdest pipeline to fighting in the war in Ukraine, is doing shenanigans in the Philippines as basically an American YouTuber, and then you end up being deported back to Russia to go fight in a war. I mean, that's something. But anyways, I mean, if the guy makes it through alive, honestly, at that point, you ought to write a book or something. I mean, it'd be a very wildly interesting book to read at that point. But anyways,
man, honestly, like, not trying to make light of the situation, but at the same time, though, if you had to title that for a YouTube video, it'd be something like, sent to the front lines, gone wrong, gone awful, gone awry, social experiment.
Hold up, dude, I got it. Pranking Filipinos, gone wrong, gone violent, gone FPV drone attack, gone Donetsk. Like, it's like
and then when they really got desperate, they were like, gone sexual. That was like, they started adding that to the title too.
Oh man, and then none of that would happen in the video. Like, it would just be like basically nothing. But anyways,
are you looking for it or something?
No, I mean, like, like, you'd be like,
I'm disappointed.
No, like, I mean, like, like, it's gone violent, gone sexual, and then there's no violence or anything. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's like saying that you're getting a hamburger with beef, but where's the beef?
You sounded dejected after I said it. You said, that whatever happened in the video. It's like, yeah, man, that came off weird.
Honestly, man, that was not the tone that I meant to convey that in. I think you just took that from it, and I didn't intend that. But I mean, still, at the same time, though, like, I'm just saying, like, it would, like, none of that would ever be in a video, like the violence or anything. Like, it was just straight up clickbait, like raw clickbait for the sake of it. That's what I was trying to get at there, was clickbait.
I got you.
Someone's about to come in our chat and go, "Hey, yo, is this clickbait?" And it's gonna be like, no, it's like, this isn't. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, we have a 2 from Ruben once again. He said, was the Rosa from yesterday struck by a drone?
I unfortunately had to declare ignorance on that, because I don't know what you mean by Rosa. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Ruben once again. He said, would bringing Greenland in as a COFA be viable?
I would generally say no. I think we ought to just leave Greenland alone in the current condition it's in right now. But I do thank you so much for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Salty, who puts in a 2. And it said, Bobcats, the world is healing.
It truly is. And a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wyatt Logan, who said, "Heart and miss you all, and I've been here every day in LSA."
And thank you so much for being here every day. And we miss all of y'all whenever we're off air. And we're happy to have all of y'all here with us tonight. So a big thanks to y'all once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ruben once again, who puts in a 2. He said, "What about the Canadian Prime Minister's new world order with China?"
I haven't heard about that myself. I think that might be more of a domestic political thing for the Canadians. So unfortunately, I have to declare ignorance on that. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to none other than Robert Planting, who put in 2. He said, "Fred rocks." I think I'm going to say fried rocks. Take a breath or two if needed.
You know, fried rocks are sounding kind of good right now, along with that sewer soup that they make in China, that famous sewer soup. Like if y'all know what I'm talking about. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
You gotta have my sewer soup. But our next one here goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2. He said, "I just saw a Hummer drive by. Gas must be cheap in LSA." And they actually have an electric Hummer now, by the way, so you could have seen that EV Hummer go by, which is actually, I guess you can call it efficient, kind of a strange vehicle to make into an EV, which was like one of the worst gas mileage vehicles of all time. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, hold up, man. I got to follow up on your joke. Honey, where is my sewer soup? Beyond that.
Get your own damn sewer soup.
There's a monster outside. And I gotta have my sewer soup. Like, man, but anyways, beyond that, though, I gotta say, you know, there are electric Hummers, and we actually saw a Hummer here in Salt Lake, folks, that actually had a giant Hot Wheels logo on the side of it. It was actually pretty cool. But with that, I hope that does address that quite well. At least the best we can. And big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, with that in mind, everyone, it's time for us to move on into the Morse code decoders and the live chats. Unfortunately, folks, due to the internets, we're only going to be able to get a couple of live chats because we've run out of time, and we have to be able to make sure to go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow so that way we can put food on our families, because man and fish can coexist peacefully. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first live chat of the night, this one goes to Sarah Barton, who said, "Do you think that World War III will start this year?"
It's hard to say. I mean, there's a chance. We'll have to see. Unfortunately, I can't really give you a good answer on that, like a clear yes or no. It's kind of up in the air at the moment. But it's kind of getting there. But I hope that does address that well. And we actually have another super chat here before we get to our second to last question of the night.
So this one goes to David, and David put in a $20 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. He said, "I think the U.S. threat on Greenland is a ruse, so NATO can prepare for war and put doubt on Putin's mind, although he probably knows that that if the U.S. can prolong this ruse, it could then add doubt in Putin's mind." And your thoughts?
I don't think so, because it's not really like it's like tough love where we're trying to get the Europeans ready like in a movie where we like karate train them and then we're like, "You have learned well, my son," and then we like disappear. Like this is basically just trying to create a distraction at this point from other issues, ones that we cannot talk about. But beyond that, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, it's time for us to move on into our next super chat. We actually have another one here. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Bruce Lee, who put in a 2. He said, "For the Hummer Hot Wheels Fund."
Hey, I like that. That's actually pretty cool. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to come up with great ideas like that. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on into the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to none other than Brittany Coy, who said, "What countries and groups do you think will be coming to help the Iranian Revolution in some way? And what ones are going to fight against them?"
I don't think anyone is, because it looks like the Iranian Revolution is almost gone at this point. So I don't really think there's even a chance or an opportunity to get involved. And if the U.S. conducts strikes, it's basically conducting strikes as a standalone sort of a deal, not in support of anything, because nothing even exists on the ground anymore. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know in my opinion. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have another super chat, this time from the Secret Vault once again, who puts in another 20-pound donation. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, alien, magic, werewolves, vampires are real. Do your research. Now, I'm not totally sure about that one right there. I might have to call Cap on that one. I might have to call Cap. I'm not sure about the werewolf vampires, especially the magic alien ones. I'm not sure about those. That variant there, I think might be. I might have to call Cap. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think I don't think I have to do research on that one because I've never run into one of those folks, and I just don't think they're real. Like I don't think those types of creatures exist out there. But I do thank you massively for the support, and we greatly appreciate you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one. But a big thanks to you.
Yes, indeed. And our next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a 10 sec. And they said, from Copenhagen, home for the club, sneaking messages as she's sleeping. LSA, live boys, take a question from the chat, and I hate that censorship.
Oh, I hate that carp. Oh, those damn carp. But beyond that, a huge thanks to you for support, Quantum Fighter from Copenhagen. And also, in your honor, Quantum Fighter, we're actually going to be using your live chat that you're sponsoring to be the final live chat of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than Bilges, who said, why are so many resources around Venezuela? And is that a strategic mistake?
Yes. The reason why there's so many of them around there is because we were thinking that it was going to be a larger military action, or at least that's what I'm assuming what the Department of Defense thought it would end up being, and then it ended up being a very small operation. So that's the reason why, and I would have to say that that whole deal was honestly a strategic blunder in many extents. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all once again for enjoying the show. I hope you all have enjoyed it greatly, because it's been another long one tonight, almost 4 hours long. And we always greatly appreciate all of y'all for watching this show and supporting it and helping it to keep on running and hitting that like button and subscribing. There were 16,000 live viewers here tonight, and 134,000 people have watched before we ended. We thank you all so much once again, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is enough news to cover in the middle of the day, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making the short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Heroes Slava, long live the Lead Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight for another night of news. And be sure to join us again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also maybe for a short war video tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. And also, we will be on yellow alert here on the Enforcer channel over the weekend, because if there is going to be something happening with Iran, it's highly likely we'll see it happen over this 3-day weekend. So we'll be looking for that. And you can believe this, take this one to the bank, believe me on this one, that if something's happening, we will be doing an emergency stream on it to cover it live as it does happen. And we will be there as quick as possible to run a stream on it. So we'll be on the lookout. And in the meantime, though, you can follow us on our Twitter page at It's the Enforcer to keep up with the real-time events also while we're off the air. And in the meantime, thank you all once again for joining us, and Slava Ukraine. Heroes Slava. Get some rest and good night.
Spring on me,